Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit. They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed.
Police officers, can you come to the door, please?
Today, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is involved in a multiple raid.
Forget about the insurance company now, it's a police matter, and I'll be dealing with it.
Surveillance footage is used to catch a fraudster in the act.
Mr. Dada Boy was followed into his place of work, which is where it all unravelled for him.
What it is, I do quite a lot of pick up and deliver.
And the staggering story of the vet who thought he could cheat the system, but lost everything.
He chose a life of fraud, and he's now paying for it.
In these times of financial uncertainty, an insurance policy that pays out in the event of unemployment can be worth its weight in gold. At least that's what 49-year-old Anoir Dada Boy thought when he took out such a policy with Aviva in 2008. It's one of those insurances that you hope you never need, but unfortunately Mr. Dada Boy was made redundant in 2011. The good news, though, was that his policy was still in place, and so he was able to make a claim from it.
He had an entitlement to approximately £1,500 a month, primarily to offset his mortgage payments for the period that he was unemployed.
Several months into the claim, one of Aviva's operatives made a routine call to Mr. Dada Boy to see how things were going.
Hello?
Hello, can I speak to Mr. Anoir Dada Boy, please?
He's going on at the moment, so are you speaking?
Is he at work? I can call back later on.
Yes, he is at work.
Hang on a minute, what was that, sorry? Did he just say Mr. Dada Boy was at work?
Yes, he is at work.
Surely there must be some kind of mistake. I thought the claim was for unemployment.
What time was the best to call him back?
Around 8 o'clock.
Not a problem. Thank you for your time.
To be told that someone claiming to be unemployed was actually at work wasn't exactly the response Aviva was expecting to hear.
Clearly it would have been inappropriate to continue a conversation, but I think the explanation that he's at work was less than helpful to Mr. Dada Boy, yeah.
Apparently, aware that on face value it looked as though he might be pulling a fast one, it wasn't long before Mr. Dada Boy got in touch to set the record straight.
So see, what is yesterday afternoon, somebody rang about 2:15, because I was at the job centre obviously yesterday afternoon because I had an appointment and it's very tough out there still.
No, that's fine, that's okay.
Well, that's that cleared up then. For a moment there, it seems as though Mr. Dada Boy was one of those insurance fraudsters. But just in case Aviva had any doubts, he made sure they knew what a fine and upstanding man he really was.
If I was to do like some voluntary work without any pay, how does that affect my things? Because I'm thinking, the mosque I go to, try and help them, and this because I wasn't sure if that affects anything because I'm not getting paid for it.
It's voluntary work, so it's not paid work, is it? So you can do that as much as you want.
Thank you very much for your help. I wasn't too sure, that's why I rang.
No problem. Anything else I can help you with today, Mr. Dada Boy?
Oh yes, can you pay all my mortgage off?
So not only was Anoir Dada Boy a good Samaritan, but he also had a cracking sense of humour. Although as far as Aviva was concerned, this was no laughing matter.
I do think some people underestimate the resources and sophistication that insurers have nowadays to identify and detect fraud. We instructed surveillance on Mr. Dada Boy for a short period, and that uncovered a vehicle at his house, a van with AD motors on the side, and Mr. Dada Boy was followed in that van to his place of work, which is where it all unravelled for him.
See what it is, I do quite a lot of pick up and deliver as well.
And it wouldn't take you long just to give it a once over, would it?
Well, I would say about half an hour.
Yeah, half an hour. So how long have you been here then?
I've been here since October.
Oh, okay. It's alright, isn't it? It's alright.
I've done it all up.
After examining the footage, it didn't take Aviva long to decide that this wasn't voluntary work. And that this definitely wasn't the local mosque. With rock-solid evidence that Mr. Dada Boy had been earning money from his own business whilst claiming on his policy, Aviva decided to pay him a visit.
He was confronted face-to-face, and at that point, with the overwhelming evidence, he admitted that he had been working. And as a result of that, the claim was repudiated in March 2012. In July, we instructed the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department. Eventually, he was convicted in the Old Bailey in 2013 of fraud and received 120 hours community service.
Now, in case you're thinking Mr. Dada Boy got off lightly, this case had a rather nasty sting in the tail.
He was also ordered to repay the monies that he had received under the policy and to pay legal costs, which was about £10,000 in total.
Thanks to a routine phone call, Anoir Dada Boy had found out the hard way that you can't cheat the system and get away with it. But what separates him from so many other fraudsters is that he did have a genuine claim.
The irony about Mr. Dada Boy's case, I think, is that he was prudent enough to take out a policy to cover him and his family in the event that he was unemployed. He was unemployed and he had a policy to fall back on, but because of his greed and his fraudulent exaggeration of the claim, he actually forfeited all of the benefit he was entitled to, and because he's now got a conviction, is going to find it even harder to get employment in the future. So the kind of question is it worth it, really?
In Anoir Dada Boy's case, the answer to that question is a definite no. Still to come, the doctored pet insurance claims, which added up to a £200,000 fraud.
Every single cat or dog that was in those policies was completely made up.
And a car insurance scammer's worst nightmare.
Normally they would say that all of this occurred in one incident, but it's not, it's 3 separate occurrences.
In January 2012, the police joined the fight against insurance fraud by forming an elite squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
I would say to anyone who's considering committing insurance fraud that now this is no longer a crime without consequence that it may have been in the past. There is a dedicated 40-strong unit known as IFED that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
They've made over 450 arrests and have saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back in our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
So if you're thinking about it, I suggest think again. There's every chance you'll get an IFED detective come knocking on your front door.
It's 6:45 a.m. and the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is carrying out a raid on a group of suspects who are thought to have been scamming a health insurance company. Tom Hill and his team are en route to one of the addresses.
The total amount paid out by the insurance company is about 20,000. We suspect they've been doing it to other insurance companies as well, so that figure could rise.
It's thought the suspects are working as a large group, and so IFED is preparing to raid 2 separate locations.
There's another team going to another address, and it will be a simultaneous arrest if all goes to plan.
With several suspects at the first location, Tom needs to make sure his team act fast.
It's just a question of securing entry in the first case and making sure the premises is secure and all the people inside are accounted for our own safety.
A few miles away, the other IFED team has arrived at the address of the other suspects and are in position ready to make their move. With raids like this, speed and surprise are everything. Once alerted, suspects may make a run for it.
Have a look, mate.
So, with the exits covered, the occupants of both houses are given a rude awakening.
Police officers, can you come to the door, please?
Good morning. from the City of London Police?
Yes, please. Yeah?
Do you mind if we come in and I'll speak to you? I'll tell you what's happening. Okay. Who else is in the house? We'll get them down. Are they upstairs? And I'll speak to you all at once. They're going to have to wake up.
Good morning. Detective Inspector Ben Flanagan from the City of London Police, Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department. Can I come in, please?
The crew remain outside at this address. Meanwhile, at the other location, Tom and his team have rounded up the 3 occupants of the house.
Okay, we're detectives from the City of London Police, Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department. I'm going to arrest 3 of you, okay, on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud. Okay, so you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something which you later rely in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
I am ready to sort.
The occupant claims the insurance company hasn't even spoken to him about the fraud.
Talk to me first.
Okay, well, they say they have, and there is a problem, and it's been reported as a crime, so I'm going to deal with it now as a police officer, okay?
Yeah.
So forget about the insurance company now, it's a police matter, and I'll be dealing with it, okay?
The case is now in the hands of IFED, which means the investigation will be run by its rules. To make the raid shorter, IFED always asks for the suspect's help in locating any potential evidence.
As I say, we're going to search your whole house. But if it simplifies it, if you can tell us where any documentation in relation to any claims that you may have made are. Is there anything down here, or is it all upstairs?
The suspects are being cooperative and have said all paperwork is kept upstairs. Tom and the team begin with a systematic search of the entire property.
We've arrested the 3 people we set out to at this address. Searches will now take place before the suspects are taken back to the police station. We're looking for computer equipment which may have been used to manufacture fraudulent receipts and invoices. And we're looking for paperwork in relation to these insurance claims that are believed to be fraudulent.
Although this case relates to health insurance, the team have got their eyes open for anything out of the ordinary. No cupboard is left unsearched. Even old computers and laptops are seized, as they could contain vital evidence in the case. Everything is bagged up and labelled, ready to be taken away and examined by IFED's investigators.
We haven't found a huge amount of paperwork. What we have found is computer equipment, which we believe it may be on there. And we found stamps, and we found a large number of memory sticks, which also could well contain data. So we're reasonably pleased with what we found.
IFED's financial investigator, Simon Stiles, has been going through the suspect's finances.
Part of my job as a financial investigator is to establish what bank accounts people have, what say they have and what they did have, go through the records to confirm that, but also to see what lifestyle they've got.
As part of his investigation, Simon will seize bank statements and paying in books to enable him to build a clearer picture of the suspect's financial income.
So all the time I'm totting it up to see what expenditures in the house, their outgoings and incoming, and does it make sense, or is there a gap which would possibly suggest that they're living from the proceeds of criminal activity.
At the other address, officers have found something which could be important to the case. IFED's Ben Flanagan calls Tom to give him the news.
We've found details of a safety deposit box here. So I'm thinking that there may well be documents relating to this offence or cash from it in the box.
If IFED want to see what's being kept here, they need to fill in more paperwork to access it.
I've now got to consider whether or not we get another search warrant. So I'm just going to see who we've got available and who could draft up the warrant application, and then we'll get over to the court this morning and swear out the warrant.
With the searches of both properties complete, the suspects, along with the evidence seized, are taken back to the station. But the most important thing now is that IFED get its hands on the safety deposit box, which could contain important evidence. Still to come, IFED are surprised at what they find.
As you can see, it would appear that we've got items of jewellery. We'll be seizing all of this.
With around 65 million pets in the UK, it's fair to say that we're a nation of animal lovers. But caring for your furry friend can be an expensive business, and in recent years pet insurance has soared, with policies on cats and dogs paying out over £450 million in 2012 alone. Inevitably, unscrupulous fraudsters have seen this boom as an opportunity to line their own pockets and are costing the industry millions of pounds every year.
Good afternoon, IFED. How can I help you?
Simon Stiles is a financial investigator for IFED at the City of London Police. In 2012, he reviewed a claim submitted by a 38-year-old vet called Matthew Morgan for injuries to his pet cat, Joe.
Mr. Morgan had put in a claim that he was driving with his wife and the cat was on his wife's lap and they had an accident.
It all appeared pretty straightforward. But when the insurance company made a routine check with the surgery who were alleged to have carried out the treatment, the practice had closed a number of months ago, which raised alarm bells with the IFED team.
The doctor who had reportedly seen the cat at the time was actually working there, was on holiday at the time.
The insurance company could smell a rat and referred the case to Simon.
Over the period of 3 years, he had set up 19 different policies on the back of 19 animals that he said he owned. But he didn't know any of them. They completely made up every single cat or dog. So it wasn't an opportunist fraud. He saw an opportunity because of where he worked, but it wasn't an opportunity, it was premeditated.
After 3 years and over 50 fraudulent claims on pets that never even existed, Matthew Morgan really was the cat who got the cream and had developed what he thought was a foolproof recipe for success.
He would make an intercepted policy for insurance of a cat or dog. That didn't happen. And at some point, he would then make a claim. Everything was stamped to legitimise it from the veterinary surgeon, and the claim form would be sent off to the insurers.
Cashing in on phantom pets and using his professional reputation meant the claims were always paid, and in his own words, it was easy money.
Because it was a professional body, they wouldn't look at it again, and they'd be happy and pay out. And the money would go straight back into Mr. Morgan's account, and Mr. Morgan would spend it. It was spent on cars, it was spent on holidays. He had family in Australia, but he didn't just go there, he just had a lavish lifestyle. Lots of trips out, a lot of weekends, breaks, a lot of meals. It was just on everyday life, but luxurious things, and a lot of people can't afford that. And he could afford it in any event, but he just chose to go a little bit more.
Quite simply, Matthew Morgan was a man living beyond his means and driven by greed.
I worked out that throughout the period of his fraudulent claims, it was a period of some 37 months. And during that time, he'd actually legitimately earned £143,000. So averaged over £5,000 a month, which most people would think was a fair wage, and there was no need to do anything else. But he was greedy, he saw an opportunity, and he wanted more. And he got £198,000 more than he should have had. Unless it had been identified by the insurers and investigated by us, he'd still be carrying on. I've no doubt of that.
After abusing his position of trust and using his expert knowledge to deceive insurance companies, Matthew Morgan was well and truly in the doghouse.
I take personal satisfaction, as me and my colleagues do, into convicting these individuals. There's only one place for them, and that's behind bars.
Simon's view was echoed by the judge when Morgan appeared at the Old Bailey on the 23rd of August 2013 and was jailed for 2 years. He had lost his possessions, his home and his career after being struck off the register of veterinary surgeons. Matthew Morgan had lost everything.
Matthew Morgan was earning a lot of money legitimately. He had no need to commit fraud, no need whatsoever. He could have had holidays, he could have collected cars, he could have visited his family abroad. He chose a life of fraud, and he's now paying for it.
For unscrupulous criminals, car insurance fraud can be a massive earner, worth almost £400 million a year. But insurance companies and the police are clamping down and fighting back. One of the biggest threats to these fraudsters are forensic engineers like Barry Wheeler, and he's seeing more and more cases where crashes aren't what they might appear to be at first glance.
The job of a forensic engineer is to look at the damage on the cars in order to establish whether the cars have genuinely crashed in an accident or whether an accident's been manufactured or whether the cars have never hit each other at all.
A self-confessed petrol head, Barry has been examining crash scenes and damaged vehicles for almost 30 years. So when Barry speaks, insurance companies listen.
This damage here takes the form of horizontal scratches. Something has scraped along the side of the car. This is a vandal scratch. That's not related to that at all. That carries on through, but then separate on here, you've got the damage on the bumper. It's reversed into a post or something. Can you see there's this vertical line? Quite normally they would say that all of this occurred in one incident, but it's not. It's 3 separate occurrences. Completely different accident.
And there's no limit to the length some people will go to in order to boost their claim.
Well, I've seen cases where people have literally hit the wing of their car with a hammer and tried to induce an accident, but that's terrible. You see that as soon as you walk up to the car, you know full well it's nothing to do with it.
An opportunist taking a hammer to their pride and joy is one thing, but what Barry's dealing with more and more are criminal gangs who will go to extraordinary measures to cash in.
There are a number of people that want to make fraudulent insurance claims, and they will make an accident happen. Crash for cash is where people will either get 2 vehicles which are both damaged and say that they've crashed into each other. They may just get a car and crash into it on purpose and say it was an accident. Sometimes they'll even dupe a member of the public into crashing into them. But they do it on purpose in order to say that an accident has occurred so that they can make a claim.
Having dealt with thousands of car crashes over the years, Barry knows all too well that the real cost of this type of crime isn't measured in pound notes.
When people are duped into having accidents, it's traumatic. Lorry drivers, they're people like you and I, they crash into a vehicle, it affects them. I mean, they may lose their job if they have too many accidents, but it's not their fault if someone's causing it. So it's not a victimless crime, there's a lot of victims involved. And of course, people are getting injured as well, genuinely getting injured.
The good news is that with the help of experts like Barry, car insurance fraud is being stamped out.
I think fraudsters need to know that it's coming to an end. The courts are becoming aware of their actions. Everybody in the industry is aware of what they're doing. We have the tools to prove the frauds that are being committed, and it's being clamped down on.
One of the biggest success stories in the fight against this crime dates back to 2007. When the Claims Fraud Intelligence team at Aviva were alerted to some suspicious activity from an individual linked to a claims management company.
There were a large number of claims that were received. The accident location was very similar, the accident circumstances were all very similar. They were pulling out of side roads and they all linked back to the same company, so we investigated further.
The idea of a claims management company is to help take the stress off the policyholder, but this particular company was only interested in helping itself.
They were deliberately crashing vehicles into each other to claim for hire, recovery, storage. The engineers' reports that they were submitting were not consistent with the damage when our engineers inspected them. The hire documentation was fraudulent and they were submitting a high number of injury claims.
The company had been staging accidents and then cashing in on the claims, and it soon became clear that Aviva were dealing with motor insurance fraud on a massive scale.
I don't think I anticipated how quickly it was going to grow. It grew on a weekly basis and very quickly we had a large number of claims, and this was a massive fraud ring of 64 live claims that we were dealing with.
But the surprises didn't end there. The investigation revealed that over a 4-year period, the directors of the company had submitted over 120 bogus claims for accidents that never even happened, in a scam worth £2 million. Unaware that the insurance companies were onto them, the fraudsters thought they were laughing all the way to the bank. But they were about to get a nasty surprise of their own.
We presented all the evidence and our findings to the Metropolitan Police, and they decided that this was an organised crime and it was something that they were going to investigate and take further. Samsung Hack received 5 years imprisonment and 10 years disqualified of being a company director, and at the time that was the largest ever prison sentence for conspiracy to defraud an insurer, so Aviva were particularly proud of being involved in this investigation.
Samsung Hack's 2 associates were given a total of 6 years behind bars and banned from being company directors for 5 years each. The trio had been well and truly claimed and shamed, and the tough sentences they received sent out a clear message to anyone else who thought insurance fraud is easy money.
I think before this case, fraudsters thought that they could get away with this kind of activity, that the worst that was going to happen was that their claims wouldn't be paid. But I think the largest ever prison sentence of 5 years shows that this is a precedent-setting case and that they will be prosecuted and they will be sentenced.
Police officers, can you come to the door, please?
Who else is in the house? They're going to have to wake up.
IFED has simultaneously raided 2 addresses in connection with a suspected medical insurance fraud group.
There is a problem and it's been reported as a crime, so I'm going to deal with it now as a police officer, OK?
So far, officers have uncovered laptops, memory sticks and several rubber stamps, all thought to be key in their investigation. The operation's gone well, although the biggest lead of the day may have come from the IFED team that raided the other property.
We've found details of a safety deposit box here. There may well be documents relating to this offence in the box.
The suspects have been arrested and taken to the local police station for questioning, while the IFED team applied for a warrant to access the safety deposit box. It's vital that IFED gets to it as quickly as possible, as they want to ensure that no one else tries to remove or destroy any potential evidence within it. Traditionally, items of high value are stored in these boxes, so the IFED team is keen to discover exactly what's inside.
And as you can see, it would appear that we've got items of jewellery. We'll be seizing all of this.
The box is packed full with jewellery, documents and other items of value, which may be evidence for the IFED investigation.
I've got a cash credit invoice here for £1,800.
We've found lots of jewellery. Until we get that appraised, we're not going to know exactly what the value of that is. But it'll be very interesting because obviously they're going to have to account for those items. It'll be very interesting to find out how these items came into their possession. So all in all, it's been a very successful day. That's everything, yeah.
The contents of the safety deposit box is IFED's largest ever haul of jewellery. The case is still under investigation. Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
Subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit, they're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, a fraudulent cyclist takes his claim up a gear.
All in all, we estimated that he would be seeking around £3 million in damages.
Stop, look and listen. This woman certainly didn't.
Suddenly a large object has struck you, you've fallen down. You see your life flashing before your eyes.
And the police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is out to catch some bad guys.
Still get quite a buzz when we're sort of knocking on somebody's door and taking out the baddies.
Life goes in cycles. Well, it certainly does for the 13 million people in the UK who regularly get on their bikes. But accidents do happen, and it's often the cyclist that comes off a lot worse. And in August 2008, Majid Khan was no exception.
Mr. Khan was cycling to work actually early one morning, and a vehicle which was insured by ourselves actually had a collision with him, and Mr. Khan was actually very seriously injured.
He had fractures of various vertebrae, multiple rib fractures and lacerations to his liver. He also had a brain hemorrhage and skull fractures. He was in hospital for around a month.
Insurance payouts on serious cycling accidents like this can be massive. And there was no doubt that Majid Khan would need financial help.
An accident like this, for us, it's more about how long it takes to recover and how full the recovery actually is.
Although Majid Khan had been severely injured in the accident, 9 months later he made what was thought to be a full recovery and even returned back to work.
Everything was proceeding pretty normally as a claim. We were investigating it, we were working with his lawyers.
We offered Majid Khan £75,000 in damages, and that offer was initially rejected.
With a cash offer refused and what appeared to be a full recovery, the insurers and solicitors thought Mr. Khan had simply got back on his bike and got on with life. But 6 months later, that all changed when Majid Khan's father-in-law got in touch.
He seemed to have a complete relapse. He could only recognise his wife. He was struggling with day-to-day activities. He was unable to walk down the road unaided.
We were told that Mr. Khan wasn't allowed out of the house on his own because his family feared that he would just wander aimlessly. He had no sense of danger, and so he wouldn't have been able to cross roads safely. We were also told that he had no concept of money, so he wouldn't be able to go to the shop and purchase an item. He wouldn't be able to check the change. He'd forgotten how to do basic tasks like using a mobile telephone. What they were alleging was that he was so severely disabled by these injuries that he would need 24-hour care and supervision, and they were alleging that would go on for the rest of his life.
Around-the-clock care would cost millions, £3 million to be exact. That's how much Mr. Khan's family claimed they needed to look after him. But it just didn't add up.
We knew that this was a man who had returned to work, and all of a sudden we were being told that he couldn't work and would never work, and that he was severely disabled.
With suspicions high, the insurance company decided to employ its best tactic in suspected fraudulent claims: surveillance footage.
Sometimes with surveillance, you don't believe that the person you're seeing is the claimant in this action.
The footage was shocking, to say the least.
You can sum up the CCTV footage very easily. Everything that he claimed he couldn't do, the CCTV showed us that he could do.
The medical experts have been told that Majid Khan didn't smoke. He was seen to smoke quite a few cigarettes. They were told that he wasn't permitted out of the house on his own, yet we saw him out apparently running errands and in some cases looking after small children. That he wouldn't be capable of shopping for himself and that he had no concept of money, yet we see him going into the local shop. That he had forgotten how to do basic tasks such as using a mobile telephone, yet he's seen having quite a long conversation with somebody on a phone. They've been told that he couldn't communicate with anybody, and again he's seen out conversing and laughing with others.
The Majid Khan on the surveillance footage was so unrecognisable from the one described on the insurance claim that even the solicitors had to double-check.
We sent it to the expert who had examined Majid Khan on our behalf during the claim, and it was only once he confirmed that he recognised the man in the footage as the claimant that we were then able to think about disclosing it.
To add insult to injury, the investigation also uncovered pay slips which showed Majid Khan was in full-time employment.
We looked at some of his pay slips and he was working full-time. In fact, he was working overtime.
He'd been peddling so many lies, the case was taken to court.
The judge said that it had been a relatively sophisticated fraud, that it was a grotesque exaggeration, and that everything Majid Khan had done had been a pack of lies.
Majid Khan and his father-in-law were both banged up for 9 months.
We now have a family who has been split up because of their own greed. The grandfather is in prison, the father is in prison, and the mother is now at home trying to cope with a young child on her own.
Unlike some unscrupulous fraudsters, Mr. Khan had genuinely suffered life-threatening injuries and was eventually paid £75,000 compensation.
Mr. Khan absolutely was injured, and we paid the amount of money which we believe covered him for those injuries. The whole issue here is that he took a case where he was injured and then tried to make millions of pounds out of it.
From an original offer of £75,000 for his cycling accident, Majid Khan had pumped up his claim to £3 million. But he was left deflated when he received 9 months behind bars.
Once that lie had been struck, he stuck with that lie. Unfortunately, Mr. Khan is now in jail and will have 9 months to contemplate that issue.
Majid Khan won't now receive the proper compensation to which he was entitled because nobody knows what the effects of the accident truly were on his life.
Coming up, a 15-ton bus gets pushy.
Suddenly a large object has struck you, you've fallen down, you see your life flashing before your eyes.
And an insurance company takes a crash-for-cash criminal to the cleaners.
The evidence was so overwhelmingly strong, we felt it right to make an example of Mr. Singh.
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, or IFED for short, is an insurance scammer's worst nightmare.
There is a dedicated 40-strong unit that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
The team was set up over 2 years ago to crack down on insurance crime in the UK.
Is there anything here that shouldn't be here that we're going to find?
In that time, it's made over 450 arrests and seen around 200 prosecutions.
If it's a fraud, it's in insurance, then it may well come to IFED's attention and IFED will take the necessary action.
Police officers, can you come to the door, please?
Unscrupulous fraudsters will stop at nothing in their lust for cash. And with street crime on the increase, why would anyone question a woman who appears to be the unlucky victim of a series of muggings?
Mugging can be a terrifying experience, especially for someone who's a vulnerable victim like a young lady. It can have a traumatic effect on the person that suffered it.
In February 2012, Anita Debnath claimed she was mugged in Trafalgar Square. With over 15 million visitors to the capital every year, it was an unlucky but not necessarily unusual crime to be a victim of, and she immediately reported it to the police.
She's lost various items, all high value, all top of the range smartphones, top of the range designer bags, top of the range purses.
A month later, she was mugged again on a trip to Leeds. Apparently a mugger's magnet, her run of bad luck didn't end there, as she was the victim again 3 months later in Dublin. And then again in Kingston-upon-Thames. On each occasion, she claimed her handbag had contained more electrical gadgets than MI5. But 4 flyby fleecings just didn't add up.
I would say you're very unlucky if you've been mugged once in a year. To be mugged 4 times in a year, in 4 different locations, in 2 different countries, is almost an impossibility.
Anita Debner thought that if she played the victim, insurance companies would take pity on her and simply hand over £50,000 in claims.
Anita Debner invented the muggings to generate some sort of, maybe some sympathy with the insurer, and also the hope that they wouldn't drill too deep into that particular offence. I think Edgy said she lost her purse on the bus or on the underground. You may have got a different response to saying that she'd actually been robbed in the street. I think that was her way of thinking that she would get an easier ride.
The real mugger in this case was Anita. She claimed from 11 different insurance companies for her made-up muggings.
She obviously felt that she would get the cheque sent through to her at the relevant time once the claim had been settled. Unfortunately for her, she was wrong because the insurers were sharing information. Her pattern of offending emerged, and it was that sheer volume that brought it to the attention of the insurers.
And by reporting the fake crimes to help bolster her claims, Anita Debner had also robbed the police of their time.
I'd take a particularly dim view of the way Anita Debner's operated. Street robbery and mugging is a serious offence which would have been treated accordingly by the relevant police force. She's quite happy to waste their time. Officers would have been allocated to investigate that robbery that never occurred.
Anita Debner had travelled round Britain and Ireland carrying out what she thought was a mugging masterpiece. But her final destination was the Old Bailey.
There were 12 charges of fraud by false representation, to which she pleaded guilty to each one, and the judge sentenced her to 2 years, 3 months custodial sentence.
Anita Debner thought she could mug the insurers of £50,000, but she was the real loser. And for her lies and deception, she ended up with a long stretch behind bars.
I'm pleased with this particular sentence because I believe it sends out a message that insurance fraud isn't a victimless crime, and it also isn't a crime without consequence.
A vital part of IFED's work is the early morning raid. The element of surprise is a powerful weapon, which enables officers to seize crucial evidence before it's destroyed. For Detective Constable Kate Sibley, it's the highlight of months of investigation.
You still get quite a buzz when you're knocking on somebody's door and taking out the baddies. But then I think it's good that we do have a bit of adrenaline pumping, because you don't know what's going to happen when they open that door.
This morning, Kate is on a double raid. Her colleague, DS Mark Fraudster, is driving to the other location as part of a joint investigation into a suspected crash for cash claim.
The actual collision has been staged, and effectively one car has been driven into another car. They've all submitted claims for the damage of the vehicle, recovery costs, and also personal injury.
As this is a multiple raid, it's essential that both teams go in at the same time.
Can we come in and speak to your son, please? Thank you very much.
Good morning. Police officers from the City of London Police. Are they here?
Right now they're not here.
Where are they?
They've gone out work.
Gone out work. Can we come in? We've got a warrant to enter and search the premises.
IFED never take anything at face value, so Kate decides to look for the suspects herself.
Okay, where are they?
They're upstairs.
They're upstairs. I did ask you that when I came in.
Did you?
Yeah.
At the other property, Mark has also found the suspect at home with his family.
Right, take a seat for me, please, mate. Just listen to what I'm going to say to you, all right? Listen carefully, because it is important, all right? I'm arresting you on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud. You conspired with others in order to submit a fraudulent insurance claim in relation to a vehicle collision.
We have a warrant to enter and search these premises as well. So we'll search your bedrooms.
They might be investigating fraud, but they still have to tread carefully when it comes to house rules.
Can we take our shoes off before we go upstairs?
Upstairs, Kate's looking for any computer equipment that may have been used in the alleged fraud.
I've seizing a laptop that I found and a mobile phone so far, but I've still got all this to do. The phones will be downloaded to get a list of all the phone numbers and calls, and we'll get a list of all the calls that have been made to see if we can link them up to the other suspects that have been arrested. And with the computer, that will be downloaded, so hopefully there'll be documentation or emails on there in relation to the claims that have been made.
At the other location, Mark also needs to seize any electrical devices.
You got a mobile phone?
Yeah, yeah.
Where's that, in your room?
In my pocket, yeah.
You got it there?
Yeah, yeah.
Whilst the phones are important, IFED is also looking for any paperwork that may show any fraudulent activity.
We found some documentation in relation to another accident claim already. It's not an accident that we're aware of at the moment. We need to clarify exactly who's involved in that claim and the nature of it, but we can obviously do check with insurance companies to find out a little bit more about that. There appears like there's at least 2 more here in this bedroom. I found details of a further claim, may well be legitimate, but it's something we need to look into. It's certainly stuff that we're interested in at the moment. We'll take it away.
It's essential that nothing is touched by the family as IFED conducts its search.
Excuse me, can I just ask you to leave that there for me, please? Yeah, please. You can stand and watch me, I'm not going to... But I just don't want you sort of interfering with things before I've had a look at them.
Any unusually expensive insurance documents are also seized.
This particular insurance quotation we've got here is in relation to when the guy downstairs purchased them, and his insurance just for 1 year was in excess of £1,000 by anyone's standards. Paying out over £1,000 just for an insurance premium seems quite excessive.
It seems the paperwork in the house is raising a number of questions.
We've got 2 separate letters here which are addressed to this particular address. However, they're in a different name, and the name, the male's name listed on both of these 2 letters, as far as we're aware, doesn't reside here. But we'll obviously take these away, make some more inquiries and interview the suspect downstairs as to who this particular individual is.
At the other property, DC Tom Hill is assisting Kate in the search. No cupboard is left untouched.
This is all stuff in the suspect's name, so obviously I'm searching a bit more closely through it all, because it's not his bedroom, but he seems to use this as a maybe to store his documents.
With all the evidence seized, bagged and removed from the property, Kate reflects on the morning's results.
We've done a search, we've seized computers, thumb drives, mobile telephones, the stuff we wanted to seize, and then we'll get that downloaded and examined, and hopefully we'll get some evidence of that. And now they've been arrested, they're going back to the police station where we'll interview them, and they'll probably be bailed later on today.
At the second location, Mark and his team have also called it a day.
Yeah, it's been a success. We've got the 4 prisoners that we've come out to get, all been arrested, all now in custody. What we often find is where there's one claim, there are numerous previous claims, and that certainly seems to be the case searching this address. So a number of inquiries to be done on those. But yeah, it's been a success.
The case is still under investigation. First Group transport over 2 million passengers every day. Each double-decker weighs in at a whopping 15 tons of steel. Not something you really want to have a run-in with. But if you are bashed by a bus, your case may well end up on Lee Ingram's desk.
The lady alleged that she was walking along the path. She's looked to the left, looked to the right. There's nothing coming, so she's decided to cross the road. As she decided to cross the road, a bus has come out of nowhere, struck her. According to her, she was thrown to the pavement very hard. Her bag and her contents hit the floor and spilled everywhere.
Even though the bus was travelling at low speed, the impact shocked the passengers on board.
She described being hit so hard that she thought she was finished. suddenly a large object has struck you, you've fallen down, you see your life flashing before your eyes, and it's a terrifying ordeal for anyone to have gone through.
To add insult to injury, in her moment of need, the woman claims she was left abandoned at the roadside.
She's alleging that no one offered her any help. She couldn't get home, she didn't have any taxi fare. The fact that no one offered her assistance or even offered to call her an ambulance, get her off the floor, yeah, a very sad indictment of society nowadays.
Still, every cloud has a silver lining, and this woman thought it came in the form of an insurance payout.
The lady claimed for physical and mental injuries. She was also claiming that she was unable to look after her children because of this accident. Therefore, her husband had to take 2 weeks off work. No wages coming in, couldn't pay her rent, couldn't pay her bills.
Some people will exaggerate their claims of illness. Some even tell the odd fib about them. So Lee always has a look at the CCTV footage before he reaches for his checkbook.
When I first looked at the CCTV footage, you can see that the bus has impacted with the woman. It's definitely not the front of the bus, more to the side.
The average bus has twice as many eyes as a spider, so Lee sets about looking at all 16 cameras to find out just how badly knocked the woman was.
When you look at the second camera, it shows that the incident isn't as serious as she's described. She hasn't actually fallen over at all. It was her handbag that's actually hit the floor.
Hold on, let's have a look at that again.
She has amazingly been hit by a bus and stayed on her feet.
The woman thought she was on a ticket to ride, but the only part of her that was left sprawled on the floor was her handbag. And was she really left stranded by the side of the road?
When we reviewed all of our evidence, including the CCTV footage, we were quite happy that the circumstances she described just weren't right. So we then wrote to her explaining what had really happened in the incident, which she must have known whether she'd hit the ground or not. We subsequently said we were not going to be paying her claim, and she has now gone away.
So basically, she walked away with just a nasty scuff to her handbag. With insurance fraud reaching critically high levels, the Insurance Fraud Bureau was created 8 years ago to clamp down on organised insurance fraud and protect innocent customers.
We essentially collate all the data from the industry and we help find the large-scale networks of organised fraud that individual insurers can't spot themselves.
Its biggest headache is crash for cash cases, where scammers either cause accidents or just pretend they've been involved in one. And more often than not, it isn't just the insurance companies who are the victims.
Crash for cash is a dangerous type of fraud. These people are taking vehicles out onto the road and they're essentially using them as weapons because they're driving one car into a collision with another, and often at quite high speed. We know that can lead to injuries, and ultimately we know it's led to at least one fatality.
With around 70,000 personal injury claims linked to crash for cash, insurers like LV are always suspicious when these types of claims are made. Just like the one from Mr. Michael Singh.
It was alleged that the claimant was driving along a main road when our policyholder came out of a side road into his path and a collision occurred, injuring not just the occupants in his vehicle but also occupants in our vehicle. Multiple whiplash injuries, an awful lot of expense in terms of vehicle damage, totalling in excess of £100,000.
With a 6-figure settlement and 7 different claims of personal injury, LV were becoming increasingly suspicious of the alleged accident.
We realised that this particular claim was being managed through a claims management company that was well known to us for providing fraudulent claims.
Incredibly, some people will damage their own car to make it look like an accident. And after a forensic engineer had looked at Mr. Singh's car, it was obvious there was no side-on smash.
What it was consistent was to a raking impact, potentially down the side of a wall, which alerted our suspicions to the fact that this car could easily have been deliberately damaged to portray having been involved in an accident.
There was also no police report, and the insurance policy had been taken out just days before the smash, so LV decided they weren't going to pay out.
However, he didn't let it lie and decided to pursue the claim further, and with the help of his lawyers issued proceedings against our customer for his injuries and the damage to his vehicle.
Mr. Singh had more front than Blackpool. Not happy that his fraudulent claim had been turned down, he decided to take LV to court for the money. With such strong evidence in the insurer's favour, the case was thrown out, but LV didn't want to leave it there.
On this occasion, the evidence was so overwhelmingly strong, we felt it right to make an example of Mr. Singh, not just to him and his relatives and those involved in the accident management company, but also to the wider population. So we decided to bring our own proceedings through the civil courts to prosecute Mr. Singh for contempt. He was given a custodial sentence of 8 months.
Mr. Singh spent 8 months in prison for lying about his scamming in court. Cases like these are crucial in the clampdown on crash for cash, which is financially crippling the industry.
The industry estimate that crash for cash scams in total cost about £400 million a year, and that cost is ultimately passed on to all of us, you and I, who pay insurance premiums.
Often seen as a crime without time, cases like the LV one are helping the IFB in their fight against crash for cash criminals.
Insurance fraud has probably been historically seen as an easy target, so if anybody thinks they can still do this and get away with it, my message is you can't.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, a staggering personal injury scam that was fueled by lies and greed.
Her claim had risen to approximately £740,000.
An IFED raid develops into a drug bust.
It's something that I've not seen before, for 9 years of policing.
And the extraordinary lengths that a mother of 3 went to in order to cash in.
She forged the signature of the doctor and also made a stamp from the surgery to authenticate the policy.
It's a simple fact of life that accidents do happen. But thanks to insurance policies, in many cases we are entitled to compensation for these unforeseen mishaps. Local councils see more than their fair share of personal injury claims. But Haringey Council know better than most that when it comes to compensation, some people are never satisfied. In 2008, they received a complaint from local resident Barbara Farai.
Mrs. Farai claimed that she fell over while she was walking with her granddaughter. She claimed that she tripped and she fell and she hurt her knee. And she said she tripped and fallen on a broken paving stone.
With the level of wear and tear that road and pavements are subjected to, incidents like this are inevitable. So Haringey Council began their usual procedure for such a claim and launched an inquiry.
Homes for Haringey didn't dispute the fact that she had fallen, that she had suffered injuries, and the council, when it investigated that claim, found that it had been negligent in maintaining that section of pavement.
So we have a genuine claim for a fall that actually happened, and the council had admitted negligence. Sounds like a textbook case for compensation. What could possibly go wrong?
Her initial claim was for damage to her knee. The council made an offer which was approximately £7,500 on the basis that Homes for Haringey's assessment of the injuries were that it would have resolved itself within a 3 to 6 month timescale.
£7,500 for an injured knee seems fair enough, but Barbara Farai didn't agree and decided to take matters into her own hands.
She submitted her own medical expert opinion to say that she was severely incapacitated by the fall and the injuries were likely to be ongoing and severe. We sent Mrs. Farai to our own medical experts who agreed that her injuries were substantial and likely to be continuing beyond the initial 3 to 6 months original prognosis.
In light of the revised assessment of her injuries, Barbara Farai submitted a new claim for compensation. Although it's fair to say that the amount she was asking for isn't quite what the council were expecting.
Mrs. Farai claimed that her quality of life had altered so substantially that her claim had risen to approximately £740,000.
For those of you who aren't mathematically minded, that's almost 100 times the figure that Barbara Farai was originally offered. But how did she get to such an inflated amount?
She claimed her husband had to give up his work to care for her 24 hours a day. She claimed for additional care support beyond her family. It was for out-of-pocket expenses, for taxis, for additional expenses as a result of not being able to live her life normally as she claimed to have done before.
The level of care and assistance that Barbara Farai was claiming for was so extensive that Haringey Council began to have serious doubts about the legitimacy of her claim, so they decided to investigate further.
We made a decision to put Mrs. Farai under surveillance to see if what she was claiming was actually true in her day-to-day life. It was felt that Mrs. Farai thought that she was being followed and resorted to using crutches and getting support from her family members. However, when she felt like that she wasn't being followed, the crutches were dispensed with and she was able to walk normally, including carrying heavy bags of shopping up and down the hill, entering the house without difficulty. So the surveillance activity in this case we felt was, not only was it justified, it supported the Homes for Haringey's case against Mrs. Farai.
With the video evidence clearly showing that Barbara Farai's claims were untrue, her case for compensation was falling down. And as Haringey Council's investigations continued, they discovered the severity of her injuries weren't the only thing that Mrs. Farai had been less than truthful about.
Mrs. Farai's original statement made no mention of the fact that she had an existing condition of arthritis which affected her knee. Both her own medical expert and Homes for Haringey's insurer's medical expert agreed that they had both been misled by Mrs. Farai and revised their statements accordingly.
Barbara Farai's case was on dodgy ground, but she still had one last chance to set the record straight.
We presented the video surveillance to Mrs. Farai and her solicitor and invited her to revise her assessment of the £740,000 claim. Mrs. Farai declined that, and so the case went to court.
So, from an original offer of £7,500 for a legitimate claim, Barbara Farai's greed and fraudulent actions landed her in front of the judge in the High Court.
The judge made an assessment that her injuries were unlikely to continue beyond 3 months, and in his opinion, the claim should have amounted to no more than £1,500, as opposed to the £740,000 that she eventually claimed. In fact, the judge was of the opinion that she wasn't entitled to claim anything.
But unfortunately for Mrs. Farai, that was just the beginning.
After the judge had said that Mrs. Farai had lied to the court and to him, Mrs. Farai and her husband were found guilty of contempt of court. Mrs. Farai received a 3-month custodial prison sentence. The judge awarded costs to be paid by Mrs. Farai to Homes for Haringey of £100,000.
It's hard to believe, but what had begun as a genuine case for compensation had spiralled into a landmark legal case that sent a clear warning to anyone tempted to exaggerate a personal injury claim.
We're not an easy target. We will investigate any and all cases that we think are made fraudulently, and we will always seek the heaviest penalty.
Still to come, surprising discoveries.
Just stumbled across something that's quite important. It will have a big impact on the local community.
And a summer holiday scam.
What set out to be a family holiday in Lanzarote, it turned into a nightmare for her.
Owning a pet can be an expensive business. The good news is that a pet insurance premium can cover unforeseen vet bills and even pay out in the event that your furry friend is lost or passes away. But inevitably, some people have seen these policies as a means of pocketing a few quid. And in 2005, the insurance company Agria dealt with a policyholder who, it would turn out, lost pets with staggering regularity.
So the policyholder was a traveller who lived in Scotland, and part of the complication of the case was that he had multiple addresses. So very difficult to pin him down, very difficult to tie one address to another. The first claims received from this policyholder were for 2 St Bernard puppies. Now they were worth £850 each, and they'd just been lost.
Losing a set of keys or a £10 note is one thing, but to misplace a pair of St Bernard puppies, that really takes some doing. With no vet's records and a dubious set of circumstances, Agria had their doubts too.
It was very suspect. We just couldn't gather the evidence to prove that the puppies hadn't existed or the policyholder didn't own them. So the ultimate resolution to that was that we paid the case.
So that's one claim and one payout. Of course, it may have just been bad luck. However, less than a year later, another claim form landed on Agria's doorstep from the same policyholder. This time, it was £350 for a poodle puppy that had died. But once again, the details were sketchy at best.
It had an illness, but it hadn't seen a vet, so we couldn't establish that the animal actually existed or that the policyholder had owned the animal. And then when the animal died, there wasn't a veterinary certificate because the vet hadn't certified it dead.
With the claim raising so many unanswered questions, Agria rejected it and didn't pay the policyholder a penny.
It is possible that the policyholder could have been very unlucky. I think with the lack of pushback from them, perhaps we'd called or made the right call in that instance.
But this wasn't the last that Agria heard from the claimant, because just over 18 months later, they received another claim form. This time it was an encore of the Disappearing Dog Act, except that this one was a pedigree bulldog worth over £2,000.
The policyholder had set the puppy loose in the back garden, come back 10 minutes later, and the puppy was missing.
The puppy was actually a year old, but that wasn't the only thing about the claim that didn't quite add up.
Quite bizarrely, for a year-old animal, it had never seen a vet, so it had no veterinary records, and When the breeder had submitted the purchase receipt, surprisingly, it had got lost in the post.
Suspicious that the missing bulldog was in fact just a load of bull, Agria decided to investigate.
We'd sent the loss adjusters out. They couldn't verify that the puppy had or hadn't been lost. So on a balance of probabilities, we settled the claim.
So that's 3 claims and 2 payouts to the same policyholder. But just over a year later, Agria's paths crossed with the claimant once again, when they spotted something on the paperwork which set alarm bells ringing.
When the claim form came in, it was from a completely different address and from a completely different policyholder. But on the front of the claim form was one of the addresses that the previous policyholder had been using, and that address was given as the address of the breeder of the puppies. So instantly there, with the past history, there were suspicions raised.
Unsurprisingly, Agria wasted no time in investigating the claim, but when they visited the owner, they made a rather unusual discovery.
There was no indication that dogs had ever lived there in terms of bowls, in terms of leads, in terms of baskets, in terms of dog food. So we were highly suspicious.
After the visit, the owner ceased all communication with Agria, and with 0 evidence that the dogs ever even existed, the case was closed. So that's 4 claims and 2 payouts. But you've guessed it, that wasn't the last time Agria dealt with what had to be the world's unluckiest dog owner.
In this instance, it was a pug puppy, and the pug puppy had got parvovirus. So this was a claim for veterinary fees. The puppy did subsequently die, but initially on the original claim, parvovirus is something that the insurance policies expect owners to vaccinate the animal against. Probably because of the nature of this dog owner, this breeder, this dog dealer, he hadn't bothered with the vaccinations. So no vaccinated puppy, no, we declined the claim.
This time, the owner's track record of never taking his dogs to the vet had backfired. And further investigations revealed he had another 6 policies in place ready to make claims on. Although as far as Agria was concerned, this dog had had its day.
But if people are determined to defraud insurers, sometimes they'll find a way. Luckily, in this instance, we stopped 3 cases, stopped potential 6 others. The downside of that was we paid 2.
In January 2012, the police joined the fight against insurance fraud by forming an elite squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
I would say to anyone who's considering committing insurance fraud that now this is no longer a crime without consequence that it may have been in the past. There is a dedicated 40-strong unit known as IFED that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
They've made over 450 arrests and have saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back in our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
So if you're thinking about it, I suggest think again. There's every chance you'll get an IFED detective come knocking on your front door.
It's 5:30 a.m. and a team of IFED officers are on their way to give another suspected fraudster one of their unique wake-up calls. A man Taylor is heading up today's operation.
This morning we're going to an address to effect an arrest, hopefully of a male who we need to speak to regarding an insurance claim for the theft of his tools. They've subsequently paid him out £1,000 on the first occasion, and he's gone on to submit a further 3 claims, and they've paid out £1,000 in total.
It was the multiple claims on the suspect's contents insurance that led IFED to suspect foul play.
What we'll look to do this morning is to go in, arrest our suspect, and then search for any items relating to any offence, particularly fraud.
Having arrived at the address, the team prepare to go in.
We're from the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department of the City London Police, and we need to speak to him, all right?
The person who's answered the door is claiming the suspect is at work, But IFED officers are a tenacious bunch and have persuaded the person at the door to call the suspect. He's now on his way home and can look forward to a warm welcome from the IFED boys on his return.
He's at work, he's working night, so we've just phoned him and he's coming back. He'll be back within the hour so that we can hopefully speak to him there.
Sure enough, just under an hour later, the suspect arrives home.
You're under arrest on suspicion of fraud by false representation, okay? You don't have to say anything at mailman defence, you don't need to question, something which you later line in court, and anything you do so maybe giving evidence, all right? But what we need to do is we need to search inside, all right? So we're looking for some items in particular. We're supposed to speak to you about exactly the items that we're looking for once we get inside.
Got a warrant?
What?
Got a warrant?
No, we're going to search his property under Section 32 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, all right? That means so we can search for any items that we believe are relevant. We can search for any evidence at all, actually, under Section 32 for the place that you immediately come from, which is your home address.
With the legalities out of the way, the search gets underway, but the cameras remain outside. Almost an hour later, a man emerges from the property, having made an interesting discovery.
Some receipts there, one for £100, and just some paperwork and his mobile phone. The reason we seized his mobile phone is because we believe that any photographs that have been taken of tools are more than likely going to have been taken on the mobile phone. So what we do is we take that back to the police station, we'll download all the data from it, and then from that we can pick the bones out of it and see what information we want from the data from the phone.
But weeding out documents isn't the only success of the day, because the team have also unearthed something that the local police will be very keen to take a look at.
One of the DCs has gone out to the shed out in the back, there's like a little outbuilding. He heard some whirring from inside, and then our suspect has said that he's growing 50 cannabis plants there. So what we're doing now is I've called the local police force down to assist us with some uniform officers to dismantle it and seize it. What we'll do is we'll probably seize all of the plants and then from that take a specific sample, but it'll be a crime that will be more than likely investigated by police.
For a man and IFED, it's an unusual bonus. After all, it isn't every day they arrest a suspected fraudster with green fingers.
It's quite a sophisticated setup, so he's obviously taken quite a bit of time to put that together. The door's key-coded to get in, which is totally unique, something that I've not seen before in 9 years of policing.
As local police units arrive, the cannabis farm is dismantled and bagged up as evidence. As far as IFED is concerned, though, today was all about bringing a suspected insurance scammer to justice, and a man is happy with the way the raid has gone.
I think we've got more than enough to look at going forward. Obviously, we won't know until we've interviewed him, till he's given an account of what he's got to say.
As the last of the cannabis plants are removed, a man reflects on the morning's events.
Yeah, it's been a good result all round. Just stumbled across something that's quite important. Although not important to our case, it will have a big impact on the local community.
Every year, thousands of us Brits pack up and head off on our holidays. But unforeseen circumstances can mean that even the most perfectly planned trip away never gets off the ground. Thanks to travel insurance policies, we don't have to be out of pocket when disaster strikes. Although in 2013, the officers at the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department discovered someone who saw these policies as a means of lining their pockets.
Joanna Hunt is a case we dealt with last year. She was a mother of 3 children, and she booked a holiday to go to Lanzarote. She booked this holiday 2 weeks before the flight, and within 2 days she'd taken out 7 policies of insurance to insure her risk against travel. A couple of days before she was due to set off, one of her children became unwell, and she took that child to see her GP. And the GP agreed that the child was unwell and would be unfit to travel.
A child falling sick is one of those things that just can't be helped. But with 7 insurance policies in place, Joanna Hunt was able to help herself. And that's precisely what she did.
She made the claim on the policies. So the insurance company sent her the claim forms, and she made a claim on all 7 policies. So the holiday cost $1,600, And had she have been paid out on all 7, she would have been making about £11,000.
Almost £9,000 profit in the space of a few weeks wouldn't have been bad going. But fortunately, defrauding insurance companies isn't that easy.
The fraud was uncovered when the insurance companies, they do talk to each other, and they communicated that they were all about to pay out on a policy. So when they discovered that, they froze the payouts and they referred the case to ourselves.
With IFED now running the investigation, Joanne Hunt was brought in for questioning.
Joanne Hunt gave an explanation in interview which had to be checked out, so we went to see her GP. He confirmed that yes, he had seen the young daughter and she had been unwell. The 7 claim forms were shown to the GP, and whilst he confirmed that he had signed one of the policies, he also said that the other 6 were forgeries of his own signature. In order to commit this fraud, Joanna Hunt had to forge several documents. The first one, of course, was the policy of insurance. She had to lie on that form to say she hadn't taken out other policies. She forged the signature of the doctor and also made a stamp from the surgery to authenticate the policy.
There was never any dispute over the fact that Joanne Hunt's child was unfit to travel. But because she'd lied and forged documents to claim on multiple policies, IFED were now dealing with a clear-cut case of fraud. But of course, Joanne Hunt had what she thought was a fair explanation of her actions.
At the time, I don't think she realised how serious this case was, but when she was interviewed in a police station by IFED detectives, she tried to explain that the reason why she took out the 7 policies wasn't in order to commit a fraud. She thought that she'd take out the 7 policies so that when the paperwork arrived, she would then look at the small print and then decide which policy she wanted to continue to take out. The remaining 6, she said she was intending to cancel, but she didn't. And she went on to claim on all 7 policies.
Unsurprisingly, IFED didn't buy Joanne's excuses, and so she was charged with 7 counts of fraud by misrepresentation.
Well, by the time she got to court, she realised that the court may not have accepted her excuses, and having taken legal advice, she pleaded guilty to court. She was sentenced to a suspended prison sentence, and she also received community service and a fine and costs.
Like so many other scammers, Joanne Hunt had been seduced by greed and the prospect of making easy money. But she discovered the hard way that fraud is a crime which doesn't pay.
Joanne Hunt was a young mother, 28 years old, mother of 3 children. So what set out to be a family holiday in Lanzarote, it turned into a nightmare for her, and she's lost her good name for life.
Having investigated cases like this for the past 2 years, Dom knows full well what the consequences of insurance fraud can be.
I think generally the fraudsters who commit these crimes, they do think it is a faceless crime. But in fact, every person in the country who has a policy of insurance, whether it be for travel, whether it be household, whether it be health, we are all paying the extra on our policies because of these fraudsters.
With £2 billion a year lost through insurance fraud, companies are doing all they can to fight back. But one of the biggest problems they face is that lengthy investigations cost time, money, and resources, which could be devoted to legitimate claims. The key to winning this battle is to try and identify fraudulent cases as quickly as possible. And one of the ways insurers are doing this is by using the likes of Sally Griffiths and her team of desktop investigators who are trained to spot dodgy claims over the phone.
What we're really listening out for is what they say, but also how they say it. Signs of nervousness, hesitation, any indication at all that the customer is perhaps buying time or being evasive, using like certain techniques that we call parroting, repeating the question back so that we know that there's something not quite right, they can't answer the question fluidly.
But the advantages of these techniques don't end there, because Sally's team have also managed to identify which type of insurance fraudsters think is the easiest target.
People believe that it's easier to commit travel insurance fraud without getting caught, and also they believe that it's not going to affect their no claims discount as it would do for a motor or a household claim.
And believe it or not, travel insurance fraud can even be affected by the weather.
During the summer months, we do have an increase in claims coming through as people are obviously going on holiday. The particular trend that we saw last year involved the nice weather that we had in England, and we found that there was an increase in cancellation claims. So it seemed that people were cancelling their overseas holidays in order to save money on that holiday and then stay at home and enjoy the sunshine here.
So for anyone who thinks that conjuring up a bogus claim on their holiday insurance could be a nice little earner, Sally has some words of warning.
People think that making a false traveller's insurance claim is going to be really easy. They can just come on the phone and speak to someone and all be done and dusted. The reality is, if they're speaking to a trained investigator, every lie that they say will be picked up on and they'll be caught out.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, a fake insurance company that targets the elderly.
I think really you ought to write people.
No, well we need to renew this today, and then it'll all come out in writing then. Okay.
Yes.
Undercover filming lands a con man in the sin bin.
A further twist was that it was reported that he was suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome.
And IFED carries out a raid on a suspect.
You're never sure exactly what you're going to find until you actually go through that door.
Where would we be without a good bit of TV? We're a nation addicted to our set-top boxes, and many of us rely on product insurance to protect us if anything goes wrong. So it's a good job there are people like Jonathan Stockton, who was determined to make sure none of us missed out on the shows we loved. He ran a Swansea-based company that came under the remit of trading standards Rees Harris.
The company was selling a service package, maintenance package. Sometimes it was called insurance, but basically it was a product that if you had a Sky system and it broke down, they claimed that they would come out and fix it between 2 and 6 hours.
Sounds like a great idea. A service that will have you back up and running, or rather lounging, within 6 hours. Except, guess what? Yep, it didn't exist.
The company operated by cold calling consumers, and the only information they had when they would cold call them is the consumer's name, address, and also their telephone number.
Despite the fact they had so little information on the customers, their sales patter was pretty convincing.
They gave the impression that they were Sky, they were phoning from Sky.
But it was a total fabrication. None of the companies that the bogus insurance company pretended to represent had anything to do with the scam.
We cover all the Sky in the Wales area. Sky Protect is the English, and it's Sky Direct then, which is the Scottish one.
Instead of duping insurance companies with fraudulent claims, Stockton had taken it to the next level by setting up a fake insurance company of his own that preyed on innocent people. The victims were carefully targeted. with fraudsters deliberately calling during the day to catch elderly and vulnerable people at home.
Some of the calls were very distressing to us listening, but it was more distressing listening to the consumer reacting to the way that they've been being treated.
Now, every year you do renew, it is going to get
Now,
cheaper.
do you remember who took this out?
Sorry?
This time last year,
Yes.
my husband was alive,
Right.
and so he would have done it.
Oh, right, okay. Well, yeah, as I said, last year you did pay £99 for the year's cover.
You hear these consumers being quite fast in not wanting to give their car details over the phone. However, they would then eventually fold and give their car details over to these sales staff who quite cunningly got it out of them.
I think really you ought to write people.
Oh, no, well, we need to renew this today, and then it'll all come out in writing then within the next few days, so you can read over there. So which card would you like to use today? Is it your debit card there?
With such an aggressive sales technique, many people were confused, hounded, and even intimidated into buying the fake insurance.
Their general tactic was to bully. So if they would get someone elderly on the phone, they would push and push. In some cases, it was quite disgusting the way the sales staff would actually speak to these elderly and vulnerable consumers.
I don't know who you are.
I just said 3 times I'm calling regarding your Sky Television.
Yeah, what's it regarding then? Sky Television, what are you on about there?
Right, so if I'm calling regarding your Sky Television, what would you think I'm calling regarding then?
Insurance? Maintenance?
Oh my...
A team of 20 scammers worked at the bogus insurance call centre. They showed no mercy to their victims, bullying people into handing over their money.
Good afternoon, how can I help you?
I've just come round to my father's house. Somebody's rung up asking to renew the Sky. You've just rung up and asked him for a one-off payment of an 80-year-old man, a one-off payment of £89 to protect something that you don't even protect already?
Yes, we do.
You do not?
It was fraud on an industrial scale. Among the 7,500 customers targeted by the group was Carol Oatey.
Well, I was cold called out of the blue. I think it went along the lines of, we noticed that your satellite insurance has expired. Now, how they would know that, I don't know. I think that's just an opening line. And told me how expensive it would be to call an engineer out without satellite insurance. And I said, yes, okay. And gave them my bank details.
The fraudsters persuaded their victims to sign up to a yearly payment of between £70 and £100, with the promise that their satellite box would be covered 24/7.
I mean, £80 might not seem like a lot of money to some people, but when you're a pensioner, it is a lot of money.
In order to appear genuine, the company sent out paperwork to their victims. It was at this point that Carol realised something was wrong.
I went to file the paperwork and realised that I already had perfectly good insurance that hadn't expired. I don't think I've ever felt so embarrassed in my life, really, to think that I could have been taken in. But it really was a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach that I'd been conned.
Sadly, Carol wasn't the only one. In a 2-year period, the callous fake insurance crew netted £500,000.
Anybody who thinks that conning the elderly into giving away their money is a good way of earning a living should think again.
But the net was closing in. Unbeknownst to the scammers, victims had alerted Swansea Trading Standards. They started to investigate and identified the 3 men behind the company: Paul Delamere, Jordan Dimmock, and the boss, Jonathan Stockting. Evidence of organised criminal fraud mounted as more and more victims came forward, and Swansea Trading Standards decided it was time to pay the call centre a visit.
We struggled to get through a locked door. Once we got in through that door, sales staff went and rubbed their name off a board. Some of the staff tried to evade us going down the back stairs. And then when we were there, the fire alarm went off. I went to see the security guard in charge of the building, and he basically told us someone had set a false alarm off on the floor below us.
Once in the property, Trading Standards wanted to get to the hub of the fraudulent activity and needed to access the computers, kept behind locked doors. It took a locksmith 3 hours to break in.
We got into the room, our computer forensic examiner looked at the computers and came back to us at a later date after we'd left the premise and told us that someone had remotely accessed that computer and deleted everything and tried to download something called Evidence Eliminator.
The operation had been stopped in its tracks. It was the last Trading Standards would hear from them for a while. Coming up, the fraudsters restart their fake insurance company again, but Trading Standards decide to shut them down once and for all.
This time we done a faster entry warrant where we took the police on entry, everybody was arrested where they were sat.
It's thought that as many as 1 in 4 people have suffered a personal injury, a figure that won't come as a surprise to the insurance industry, which is seeing a dramatic increase in these types of claims. More than 1 million of these claims come from workplace accidents, like the one that David Ribchester suffered in February 2006. DCI Dave Wood, who heads up the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, worked on the case.
Mr. Ribchester reported to his insurance company that he'd suffered an accident at work. He said he was up a set of ladders that collapsed underneath him, and as a result of the fall, he's injured both his wrists when he hit the ground. And as a result of that accident, he suffered life-changing injuries.
According to David, the ladder had fallen on both of his wrists, which he claimed left him unable to do even the most basic tasks.
One was driving a car, 2 was playing his favourite sport, rugby, and lastly, and perhaps most important of all, he couldn't pick up his small daughter. And this was the worst thing for him, so he told us.
But David's injuries weren't just physical, as John Beadle from Insurers RSA explains.
A further twist was that it was reported that he was suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome as a result of the accident.
With such serious physical and emotional damage, David's claim stacked up to a huge sum.
He claimed ultimately for £900,000 or thereabouts in terms of compensation to compensate for his loss of earnings and for the care that he would need going forward in his life.
It was a massive compensation bill, one which would have taken care of the 31-year-old for the rest of his life.
This case is one of the biggest single instances that IFED have investigated in its operation so far. Almost £1 million going to one person, for him, would almost be like a lottery win.
As with any large insurance claim, the insurers looked into it thoroughly, and they didn't like what they saw.
There came a point of time when we began to doubt the truth around the extent of Mr. Ribchester's alleged injuries and incapacity, and so we began to investigate, and as part of that investigation we deployed some surveillance.
All seemed fine at first, but then they noticed something which blew his claim out of the water.
It showed a person going normally about their daily life, and there wasn't any apparent incapacity or injury that prevented him leading a normal life.
During the course of the surveillance, Mr. Ribchester was seen driving his car. He told his insurers he couldn't drive a car. He was also seen shopping in a supermarket. Again, he told his insurers he couldn't carry out that task. On Mr. Ribchester's birthday in July 2009, he was actually filmed hosting a barbecue at his home address, during which he erected some garden furniture. He greeted guests with a firm handshake of his right hand. He was seen flipping burgers on the actual barbecue itself, and also several times picking up his young daughter with his supposedly severely injured right hand.
The footage proved that David was lying about his injuries in order to inflate the size of his claim. But the surveillance didn't stop there, and what the police saw next revealed the shocking extent of his fraud.
The biggest nail in Mr. Ribchester's coffin was actually the surveillance footage of him playing rugby at his local club. So there he is, grabbing the ball, gripping it tightly, fending off tackles, charging along the grass turf. Things that he said he couldn't do, would never be able to do for the rest of his days, clearly captured on surveillance footage, looking in quite fine fettle, running across the rugby pitch.
That surveillance footage was, at our request, shown to the medical experts, who, as a result, said that in their opinion that he was grossly exaggerating or making up the level of injury or incapacity that he was suffering from.
Clearly, David was trying it on. Armed with a wealth of footage, the insurers decided to tackle the fraud and pass the case to the police.
IFED detectives arrested Mr Ribchester at his home address in the northeast of England, and some months later he appeared at the Old Bailey, where he was charged with fraud by false representation. The judge, in fact, said this man was greedy, and he also went on to say that it's a result of greedy men like Mr Ribchester that other genuine claimants could sometimes be put under scrutiny as a result of his selfish actions.
David Ribchester's foul play had well and truly landed him in the sin bin. For exaggerating his claim, the penalty was 8 months.
During IFED's operation, we seem to come across two different types of fraudsters in this insurance fraud arena. One would be the organised criminals, the gangsters that do it for a living, and the other lot I would describe as greedy people that see an opportunity, potentially a meal ticket or a lottery win like Mr Ribchester.
Ironically, if Mr Ribchester had been honest about the extent of his injuries, he would have been legally entitled to about £250,000 compensation. But because he lied, the whole of his claim was thrown out, and he was left with no money, a prison sentence and a criminal record. Still to come, a rude driver's insurance claim hits the skids thanks to CCTV evidence.
There's no evidence of a slow joining of traffic, and as far as the creeping along goes, I'll let you be the judge of that.
And victims of the fake insurance company see justice served.
And how dare they do that to the elderly?
The Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, or IFED for short, is an insurance scammer's worst nightmare.
There is a dedicated 40-strong unit that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
The team was set up over 2 years ago to crack down on insurance crime in the UK.
Is there anything here that shouldn't be here that we're going to find?
In that time, it's made over 450 arrests and seen over 200 prosecutions.
If it's a fraud, it's in insurance, then it may well come to IFED's attention and IFED will take the necessary action.
Police officers, can you come to the door, please?
Today, DS Mark Fraudster and his IFED team are on their way to arrest a suspect in what they believe is a case of insurance fraud. It all started when the suspect racked up so many parking fines that bailiffs impounded their car.
She subsequently reported to police that her car has been stolen and also made a claim to the insurance company in relation to the theft of that vehicle.
Mark has deliberately organised an early morning raid so there's more chance of catching the suspect at home. And he's well aware of the challenges that his team could face when they go in to make the arrest.
You're never sure exactly what's behind the door. You can do your intelligence checks to give you a good indication of what you're going to find there and who you're going to find. But until you actually go through that door, you're never sure.
410, Dennis.
Yeah, can you show us on scene, please, CAD 1084?
They arrive at the suspect's address and get into position.
The little one.
Oh, right, okay.
Mark's hoping that the early start means the suspect is more likely to be at home.
Good morning.
And they are.
Police. I'll just speak to you inside, please. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, that's all.
Just one of my colleagues comes in as well.
The cameras stay outside.
So at 5 minutes past 7, I'm arresting you on suspicion of committing fraud by false representation. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm expense if you do not mention when questioned something she later rely on for. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Do you understand?
With the arrest made, the operation has got off to a good start.
I don't think she was expecting us at all. She was quite surprised. My colleague, when he arrested her, she had no idea what it was about.
But the arrest is only the beginning. The success of the operation relies on finding evidence of the alleged fraud. IFED are searching for paperwork that relates to the vehicle. Luckily, the suspect is proving to be cooperative.
We've asked her, it's basically so we don't have to go through the whole house, where she keeps all her documents, correspondence, and she's indicated to us in her bedroom.
And that's just where they find potential evidence.
This is some of the evidence that we've seized from the property, from the bedroom of the lady we've arrested this morning.
Unusually for the IFED team, the potential evidence in this case is paper-based and doesn't involve phones or computers. Most IFED raids last several hours, but in this case, Mark's thankful that it's been relatively straightforward.
Very happy. It's all gone very smoothly. We're, in and out of the address within sort of 45 minutes. She's now on her way back to the City of London, where she'll be interviewed in relation to the fraud that we believe she's committed.
Mark's pleased with how the day has gone. The arrest has been made, potential evidence has been collected, and the investigation can now move on to the next stage. There's nothing more frustrating than coming home from a hard day's work, turning on the TV, and it's broken. But don't worry, if you've got insurance on it, you'll be sorted. Well, not if you're one of the 7,500 people who were cold called and bullied into buying a bogus maintenance package by Jonathan Stockting and his crew, who'd set up a fake insurance company.
You've just rung up and asked him for an 80-year-old man for a one-off payment of £89 to protect something that you don't even protect already?
Yes, we do.
You do not?
The group targeted elderly and vulnerable people with insurance deals that they didn't want, need, or in some cases already had.
I mean, £80 might not seem like a lot of money to some people, but when you're a pensioner, it is a lot of money.
After a mountain of complaints at Swansea Trading Standards, the team paid the phony operation a visit.
We got into the room, our computer forensic examiner looked at the computers and told us that someone had remotely accessed that computer and deleted everything.
With the fake insurance company closed, Trading Standards thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't long before the complaints started to pour in again. It appeared that the company was still operating.
And at this point we decided the only thing we could do was to raid the company again. And this time we done a faster entry warrant where we took the police. On entry, everybody was arrested where they were sat, not allowing anybody to interfere with any of the evidence that we were going to gather.
This was the largest operation that Swansea had been a part of. It involved 50 police officers, along with various teams from the council. Despite this, the scammers had shredded all paper evidence. But the key to the crime was their calls.
We found call recordings, but those calls certainly helped us a great deal with our investigation.
Well, I don't want that.
Well, you don't want Sky Protect?
No, I don't want Sky Protect.
Right, okay. You know, if you need an engineer out for any particular reason at all,
Yeah.
an engineer will charge you £90 a call-out fee.
Right.
£100 addition, like up to £200 for the box, maybe a bit more for the HD box. Now, with you not having cover, there's nothing that we can do about that.
What was perhaps more shocking was that this wasn't just a few fraudsters, but a team of around 20, all knowing that every day, every call was conning an elderly person out of money.
And you had a big sales floor which was populated by all these staff, and it probably they were looking up to 20 staff at some points in the business, and everybody in that business had to be aware what was going on and was implicit in it, and it was all linked and all very loyal.
The audio proved to be the killer piece of evidence that allowed the council to build a case against the scammers. They took Jonathan Stockting and 16 members of his team to court. It was the culmination of a 2-year investigation into a scam that had covered most of Wales and parts of England. dialling in an estimated £500,000. The weight of evidence against them meant that the three main players pleaded guilty to a conspiracy to defraud. Jonathan Stockting and Paul Delamere both got sentences of 4 years, and Jordan Dimmond was given 3.5 years. In all, the judge handed down jail terms totaling almost 30 years to 14 people involved in the scam.
When they were sentenced, we felt that this was justice for all those consumers who we either had to speak to or listen to, and the way in which they've been treated. It wasn't really how much that we felt, it was justice had been served for them.
People like Carol, who was a victim of the fraud.
It's like mugging, isn't it? It's mugging over the phone, and you feel justice violated, as if they'd hit you on the back of the neck. And how dare they do that to the elderly?
Buses are great. Well, if you haven't got a car. And let's be honest, when you're behind the wheel, the last thing you want to see is this. Being stuck behind a slow-moving bus can be frustrating. But for one driver, he thought it was well behind him, until it allegedly collided with him. Lee Ingram of First Group dealt with the incident.
When the other vehicle driver has submitted his claim, he has stated that he was creeping forward and the bus has just hit him straight in the back of the car and damaged the side of his car at the same time.
But when First Group asked for the bus driver's version of events, he had a completely different take on it.
The bus driver in this case clearly says that he was passing the third-party vehicle when the third party has given him the V sign and then pulled across straight in front of the bus, leaving him no opportunity to avoid a collision.
The two versions didn't add up. It was the claimant's word against the bus driver's. So Lee Ingram turned to his fail-safe backup, CCTV. The footage clearly supports the bus driver's account. Keep your eye on the red car on the left.
The first thing you notice from the footage is that the third party has clearly made up a set of circumstances to tell his solicitor in order to pursue his claim. There's no evidence of a slow joining of traffic, and as far as the creeping along goes, I'll let you be the judge of that.
The red car can be seen driving at a normal speed. But from the camera on the side of the bus, the car pulls in front of it, cutting it up and clipping it on the front.
CCTV footage is very important in circumstances such as this.
The footage shows the car driver wasn't telling the truth, but it also revealed something else as well. To add further insult, the driver just did that. Oh, hang on a minute, what was that? 2 fingers? Oh no, it's just the one. Well, that's a bit rude.
There doesn't really seem to be any logical reason as to why the other party should be so angry towards a bus driver. I know there are situations where some people just do not like buses getting in front of them in traffic. I think this is a particular case where the other driver has just decided to not let the bus through and has almost stuck his fingers up in a V sign to say, "No way, mate, you're not coming past me," and then decided to go for it in front of the bus. The claimant in this instance is clearly used to getting his own way. On this occasion, he has tried to muscle in on a 12-ton vehicle, which might not have been the wisest of moves.
And his offensive behaviour didn't stop there.
After the accident, the third party was very abusive towards the bus driver, constantly using foul language. He claimed to have a sore neck and yet refused to have an ambulance called for him.
Despite this, he later submitted a claim for multiple personal injuries, but surprisingly, nothing for damage to the car. Because, as the CCTV showed, there was none. His motivation seemed to be personal gain.
He was heard to say that he was intending to get a new car out of this incident.
The only actual damage was a small scratch to the side of the bus. The CCTV proved that the claimant wasn't owed compensation because he'd never actually been injured. In fact, it showed that he owed them for the damage to the bus.
The claimant did not receive any compensation arising from this incident. We did, however, recover the £34.50 cost of repairing our vehicle.
More proof that it's better to keep both hands firmly on the wheel when driving. Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled, dedicated police unit, they're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the pedestrian who forgot her Green Cross code and tried to cash in on it.
She's looked both ways? No, that's not true at all.
The police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department catch a suspected fraudster with his trousers down.
Well, I've no pants on. Don't need to get dressed.
And the jaw-dropping lengths that one woman went to in her bid to scam insurance companies.
In my 2.5 years in charge of IFED, this is the most despicable and shocking case I've come across by some distance.
Nowadays, we're bombarded by adverts from claims management companies telling us that we could be owed a small fortune in the event of an accident. This has led to a boom in claims for personal injuries, and while many of these are legitimate, some are not.
I think that some people are under the misguided conception that wherever there's an incident, then there is a claim to be made. That's not true at all. In order to be successful in a claim in this country, you've got to prove that someone was negligent.
But proving negligence isn't as easy as some people think. And public transport operator First Group find themselves battling dubious claims on a weekly basis. One particular incident which raised such a claim occurred on a busy bus route in central London.
We have a woman alleging that she's looked left, she's looked right, she's seen no traffic coming, so she's assumed it's safe to cross. She stepped out and the bus has hit her.
A pedestrian versus a bus is only ever going to have one winner. Now, as any youngster with good road sense will tell you, before crossing the road, it's vital that you stop, look both ways, listen and look again. And although the pedestrian in this case claims she did exactly that, First Group weren't so sure.
The one thing that would suggest that's not true is if you look right, you would see a 15-ton bus coming towards you, and you should be able to therefore stop and not get run over.
Historically, cases like this will be one person's word against another. But thanks to modern technology, it's becoming easier to find out what really happened.
She's given her version of events, the driver will give his version of events. The one factual piece of evidence we have is the CCTV footage itself. The camera doesn't lie, it shows a true picture of what actually happened, and it's an invaluable source of evidence.
Most buses have at least 10 CCTV cameras, and although they're primarily used for passenger and driver safety, they can also be very handy when it comes to settling claims like this.
When we've looked at the CCTV footage, we're expecting to see a woman stepping out from between two vehicles, having looked both ways, and stepping out just not having seen the bus for some reason.
It sounds reasonable enough, but is it what really happened?
You'll see the lady suddenly appear from between the two vehicles. She doesn't look, she just looks left, steps out. There's no attempt to look right.
The woman steps out between a stationary sightseeing bus and a trailer. The double-decker is so large she can't see the other bus coming her way. And to make matters worse, she doesn't even look.
If you're going to step out from between two vehicles, your view's going to be very poor. You need to make sure that you can see what's coming before you step out.
The driver has no time to react, and as quick as he's on the brakes, the woman is hit by the front corner of the bus, throwing her up in the air.
There is no way he's going to avoid hitting her when she steps out when the bus is that close, and the footage shows exactly that.
From the driver's perspective, it looks like a devastating blow. But the multiple cameras positioned at various points on the bus give a clear picture of exactly how severe the collision was and what happened next.
You can see the force of the impact has driven her to the ground and she's rolled underneath the flatbed truck, but she's out and up pretty quickly.
As severe as the impact looked, thankfully the woman wasn't seriously hurt. But it wasn't long before First Group received a claim for her injuries.
The injuries that were subsequently claimed for compensation from us were probably more to do with her hitting the ground than actually the impact with the bus itself. She's got some minor cuts and bruises, the ever-present whiplash claim. She's got a main injury to her knee, which has necessitated her having to use crutches for up to 6 weeks. Some 9 months after the accident, she's still alleged to be suffering from her injuries.
Incidents like this are nothing new, and First Group find themselves dealing with claims like this on a weekly basis.
In light of the advertising that goes on today, and it's made quite clear how much you can get from a simple slip or a trip or a fall at work, it's probably reasonable to assume that this lady may have assumed she can get £3,000 to £3,500 for this accident. So you could argue, why wouldn't she put a claim in? I would say because it's an out-and-out lie, to be honest, but that's just my opinion.
It may sound harsh, but it's important to remember that the woman alleged to have looked both ways and is claiming that any negligence lies with the driver. Such allegations mean that in cases like this, it isn't just the injured parties who can be the victims.
What happens to the drivers that are confronted with these things on a daily basis? I watched the CCTV footage back on this one. You can see the horror and the general anguish in the driver's face. He just looks horrified that this has happened. And these sorts of things, when drivers are confronted with these sorts of situations, this wasn't even a serious injury. Had it been more serious, some of the drivers can walk away with serious emotional scars. It can affect their confidence, the way they drive, and yeah, it can have a big knock-on effect.
Although this case was a genuine accident, the woman tried to exaggerate her claim. But there are some people out there who will create an accident with the sole purpose of cashing in. Someone who has first-hand experience of this despicable crime is bus driver Maxine Wild, who found herself at the centre of a number of fraudulent claims after a motorist deliberately collided with her bus.
I love my job, I really do, and I want to keep on doing it. But when this incident happened, I thought, that's it. I finally found my dream job after 30 years of looking, and it's going to be taken away from me. I was a little bit unsure of whether I'd still have a job at the end of it all. They think it's victimless, but it isn't. They don't care if I'm unemployed. They don't care if I have sleepless nights.
Thanks to CCTV footage, Maxine's case was thrown out. But what about our pedestrian who appeared to forget her Green Cross code and then exaggerated her claim? Armed with video evidence of the whole incident, First Group felt they had a watertight case against the woman's claims.
Upon reviewing the CCTV footage in this particular case, we've then revisited the lady's statement. She's trying to cross the road, that's true. She's been hit by a bus, this is also true. She's looked both ways? No, that's not true at all, and the footage clearly shows she hasn't, so we've gone back to her solicitors and we've said the statement given by your client just doesn't match up with what's on the CCTV footage. Here's a copy, tell us what you think. We haven't heard since.
Given the video evidence, it's hardly surprising that this case has stalled. And Lee is keen to point out that injured parties are only entitled to compensation when they are not at fault.
The customer care side of First Group, which I'm involved in, very much just want to deal with the genuine claims as quickly as possible and for the right amount, and that's what we're really there for. When we have incidents like this, it slows procedures down because we have to investigate claims that are not genuine. Her statement was not true, and although I feel very sorry for anyone that's been hit by a bus, regardless of how it's happened, it doesn't mean that we're just going to keel over and pay every single claim, because we can only really pay cases where we are negligent, and in this case, it's just not.
So if there's a lesson to be learned from a case like this, it's that when there's no blame, there's no claim. Still to come, an insurance company turns the tables and reclaims what's rightfully theirs.
He's got no idea that we're coming to recover the vehicle today
which is our weapon, if you like, the element of surprise.
And one of the most shocking cases that IFED has ever dealt with.
And it was one fraud after another fraud after another fraud.
When insurance fraud hit an all-time high, the City of London Police decided that enough was enough and formed a specialist unit with the sole aim of tackling the fraudsters head-on.
IFED is a dedicated team that deals with insurance fraud. Whatever insurance policy there is out there, we investigate it.
It's 6:45 a.m. and this team of IFED officers are heading up north to investigate a suspected case of car insurance fraud. Aman Taylor is heading up the operation.
We're hoping to find any computer equipment or any genuine documentation which we can use as evidence later once we get to the interview stage. It's going to be slightly more difficult than dealing with a standard case. He's gone to lengths to cover up his tracks.
Every raid has its own risks and obstacles, and today is no exception.
The property itself we've looked at from research, and we believe to be large enough, a big enough property that it's going to take a few of us to secure the property. That's why we've got uniform attended to assist us with securing the property and securing a person once we arrive there.
When the team arrive at the location, the property is so large that a man does a quick recce to find the front door.
I think it's maybe the property. I'm just going to have a quick look up that driveway.
As the building is unlit and pretty large, it takes the team a few moments to work out the layout.
Pardon? Ah.
But nothing deters the IFED team, and soon they're at the front door, ready to give their suspect an early morning wake-up.
Hello, you Mr.
Yeah.
We have a warrant to search the premises.
The team are in, although unsurprisingly, not everyone is particularly pleased to see them.
Oh dearie me, I can't believe this. I don't like this thing bloody like.
After a dressing down by a surprised family member, a man arrests the suspect and explains the implications this will have on his privacy.
Do you want me to get dressed?
Yeah, what I will do is, because you're under arrest, what I'll ask is that one of the uniform officer will stay with you just while you get dressed. He's
Well, I've no pants on. So
yeah, I know. He's not going to stand there and watch or anything like that. But he's got to be with you whilst you're under arrest because you're under arrest.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll go get dressed.
Once arrested, you are never out of sight of the police officers, regardless of what you are or are not wearing. And it's not uncommon for suspects to try and destroy incriminating evidence. Meanwhile, DI Dom Parkin explains to the suspect's family that their cooperation could make the process a lot easier.
Rather than us searching the house from top to bottom, we could say to him, we are here to search for documentation for the insurance claim.
Yeah.
If you want to show us the drawer where it is,
right,
we're satisfied that that's what we need, then that may conclude our search. If he says, search the house, then we'll search the house.
Right, okay.
We'll be over that forklift thing.
Keen not to have the entire house searched, the suspect agrees to show a man and the team where he keeps the documentation that they're after.
Do you want me to go get it for you? Do you want me to come with you?
Yeah, if you can show us where we're going. Is it within this house?
No, it's outside. There's nothing in this house.
Alright, we'll come with you to the office and you can show us to the offices.
The suspect is giving his full cooperation and is claiming to have all of the information a man needs in one briefcase. But of course, IFED never take what suspects say at face value, and there's absolutely zero chance of them leaving it at that.
So everything business related would be in this office, and that is your work computer.
Yeah, if you want to take the work computer, that's fine. Yeah, you'll just crack on and see what you want.
So far, we've located our subject, so we'll be looking at completing our search, seizing what we need to seize, and then taking it for him to be interviewed. I'll put that down as ATO2.
To be sure of building the strongest case possible, the team are seizing anything that could provide the evidence they need.
We'll take this, and then there's a possibility that we might even have a trace of him producing a document on Word.
But computers and laptops aren't the only things that can leave an incriminating trail.
What we can do with the phones is we can download the data from them, and we can get any text message, phone calls, anything like that that's relevant from the phones themselves.
Before leaving, the office is given a final sweep for any more evidence that might help secure a conviction.
Well, looks like it's daylight.
Dark day.
Several hours after arriving, the search is complete. But for a man and his team, this is just the beginning. The good news, though, is that things are looking promising.
Now, our intention is to go back to the police station, refer back to the exhibits that we've seized, and we can then use them for interview once we've got him back at the police station.
As anyone who drives a car knows, being without it can be a real pain in the neck. So in the event of a crash, a complimentary hire car can be a real lifesaver. And thanks to legislation, it's something that insurance policyholders can take advantage of.
The credit hire industry works in that if somebody has an accident in a car and it's not their fault, they're entitled in law to a replacement like-for-like car. So if, for example, you have an estate car where you need to put a dog in the back, a pet or a pushchair, you're entitled to a replacement like-for-like car.
Sounds great, doesn't it? But of course, the idea of a free set of wheels also appeals to fraudsters. After all, why pay for your own when you can use someone else's? To combat this threat, insurance companies have dedicated teams tasked with keeping a watchful eye on their hire cars. Neil Thomas heads up the Asset Protection Unit at Accident Exchange.
We have about 3,000 vehicles, mainly prestige vehicles. So our responsibility is to make sure those vehicles, when they're out on hire, are fully protected, are being used effectively. They're not getting involved in things we don't want to get involved in. So we're really in charge of making sure the assets are safe and make sure people don't disappear with very valuable cars.
Sadly, sometimes cars do go missing, which is exactly what happened when one of Accident Exchange's customers submitted a claim for crash damage to his pride and joy.
We replaced his car, which is an Aston Martin, with one of our Bentley cars, which is a Bentley GT Continental, which is around the same value.
So far, so good. But when Accident Exchange began to investigate the claim, they soon discovered something a little odd.
The collision was between an Aston Martin and a third-party vehicle. Our inquiries revealed that the client owned both vehicles, so it's potentially a staged accident. This aroused our suspicion to say it's probably a fraudulent claim.
An investigation revealed the accident had been staged. But strangely enough, it was at this time that the policyholder went off the radar. After several months of unsuccessfully trying to contact him, the Asset Protection Unit resorted to what's known in the trade as a snatchback.
Doing a snatchback, so getting the car back from the client, is the last resort for us.
As the name suggests, a snatchback is where the rightful owners of the vehicle use a spare set of keys to take it back. But doing so can be a risky business.
It was a rural location, so out in the country, a nice house. We went quite early in the morning, which is probably the best time to go. The interesting thing for our guys that turned up was there was a rather large Rottweiler and it was all fenced off, so we couldn't actually gain access to the property. But the Rottweiler certainly woke us up that time in the morning.
The guard dog may have added a bit of bite to proceedings, but it didn't stop the team from reclaiming the Bentley.
This particular case went to court because we could prove that it was a staged accident. The guy that owned the Aston Martin had breached the terms of his condition, the contract, so we needed to take him to court to recover our costs.
For his troubles, the policyholder was ordered to repay costs totalling £50,000. But cases like this are becoming increasingly common, and today the Asset Protection Unit are on their way to carry out another snatchback. It's early morning, and Ian and Tony are a long way from home. They've been on the road for almost 4 hours, but are now just minutes away from the location.
He's got no idea that we're coming to recover the vehicle today, which is our weapon, if you like, the element of surprise.
They might be the rightful owners, but snatching cars can still be a hazardous business.
Our main concern is to, at all costs, avoid confrontation. You can never account for what may happen once you get there.
But an irate customer isn't the only thing the guys need to worry about.
In the past, it has happened that although the client has obtained the vehicle fraudulently, he will report it stolen. And there have been instances in the past where we've actually been pulled up by the police and they've thought that we've actually stolen the vehicle, when in actual fact we're the lawful owners and we're just recovering our property.
To avoid any confusion today, Ian and Tony have alerted the local police about what they're doing.
The vehicle should be up here somewhere. We just start having to look and identify if we can see any grey Vauxhall insignias.
Quite closely parked together, aren't they? I hope I can get it out if it's here. The horse is there. That's it.
That's it.
Right.
Having found the car, Ian has to act quickly. There's no room for error. And now definitely isn't the time for stalling it. The guys are safely away.
We've got the vehicle. It appears undamaged at the moment.
Ian and Tony pull into a garage to give the car a quick once-over and check there isn't anything illegal on board.
There's a lot of property in there, isn't there?
Apart from a load of junk on the back seat, the car appears to be okay.
Our priority now is to get the vehicle back to Birmingham as soon as possible. We'll try and make contact with the client just to let him know that we have recovered the vehicle and we're sending his property back to him. I'm sure it won't be the last one that we'll be doing, but yeah, a very successful mission.
Just 2 weeks after its inception, IFED dealt with a case that would eventually highlight the shocking depths that some fraudsters would sink to. The initial report was of a young woman called Emma Fisher, who was suspected of submitting fraudulent insurance claims. DC Alex Cooley headed up the investigation.
We went up to Walsall and Emma Fisher was arrested in relation to 7 fake household contents insurance claims. Time and time again, she was claiming for the same items. But she told us at that stage that the frauds were limited to a total of 7.
Even after 2 years of operations and 450 arrests, head of IFED David Wood can still clearly remember the sequence of events that surrounded Emma Fisher.
We hoped that encounter with the police and with IFED would be her one and only dealings with us.
Will that be long enough?
We were sadly mistaken.
3 months later, IFED were dealing with a number of suspected fraudulent claims when they noticed a familiar name on the case notes.
This time, we could see the extent of her offending. It was over a long period of time, was quite systematic and well thought out. It was different to the offending we'd seen before.
It was clear that IFED were dealing with a serial fraudster. But what was disturbing were the lengths that Emma Fisher was prepared to go to in the hope of cashing in. For starters, there were multiple claims on pet insurance policies, some of which were for dogs that didn't even exist.
Emma Fisher was typically claiming that she had purchased a new Chihuahua and that Chihuahua had subsequently either been stolen or it had gone astray. She would substantiate that with emails pretending to be a pet breeder to prove the original purchase of the dogs. She was quite imaginative. The claim was generally for the entire price of a replacement dog.
But IFED soon discovered that claiming on phantom pooches was just the tip of the iceberg. Because when it came to Emma Fisher and fake claims, no insurer was safe.
She moved into mobile phone insurance, where she claimed that she was mugged and that she'd lost a mobile phone. She pretended that she had been defrauded on her bank account, typically claiming that, again, she'd been robbed and that her card had been misused. She also got involved in a couple of more specialist lines of insurance, including, for example, income protection insurance, so where she claimed that she'd had a job, which was a lie, and that she had subsequently been made unemployed and she was claiming for an indemnity to cover her lost earnings.
Defrauding insurance companies for a bit of cash with phantom pets and made-up muggings is one thing, But IFED's investigation soon highlighted that Emma Fisher was anything but an average fraudster. In fact, she had even used false claims to bag herself a house adapted for a disabled person. That's right, a house.
In order to obtain the disabled adapted house, Emma Fisher sent an email to the housing authority pretending to be a doctor. The doctor had the fake name of Mr. Ahmed. Mr. Ahmed, in this supposed email, was saying how Emma Fisher was suffering from terminal cancer and needed use of a wheelchair. And then in the same claim, Emma Fisher also pretended to be a social worker and emailed claiming that Emma Fisher had been the victim of domestic violence.
With no moral scruples, Emma Fisher even claimed she had cancer. In fact, there were no depths that she wouldn't stoop to.
Not only did she get the disabled adapted house under false pretences, but within the first couple of weeks of her tenancy, she made a false public liability claim against the housing group. And what she did was she pretended that she'd fallen over some debris in the garden, which she'd alleged had been left by the housing authority. In fact, on that occasion, she had taken an image of a bruised leg from Google and submitted it as evidence of her own false injury. And as part of that claim, Emma Fisher alleged that she'd suffered a miscarriage as a result of the fall, which was extremely serious and again turned out to be totally untrue. It became clear just how manipulative Emma Fisher was prepared to be. Obviously meant that in my investigation I had to take everything she told me with a very large degree of caution.
To you and me, that's a very large pinch of salt. After further investigation, IFED had quite a dossier on Emma Fisher, and the findings were staggering to say the least.
Our investigation revealed that over a period of almost 4 years, Emma Fisher had submitted 65 fraudulent insurance claims.
Incredibly, during that time, Emma Fisher only got away with £8,500. But it was the incredible lies she told that made her case stand out.
In my 2.5 years in charge of IFED, this is the most despicable and shocking case I've come across by some distance. We've not encountered this before, that someone would pretend they've got a terminal illness, would pretend they've been the victim of domestic violence, or would pretend that they're actually had a miscarriage. But Emma Fisher did each of those three things.
It was clear to me on listening to the phone recordings of her deception and to reading the various emails that she'd sent that she seemed to be fully immersed in the roles that she was assuming. She was almost like a method actor. I think she could be quite convincing.
But Emma Fisher had given her final performance. In July 2012, she was arrested by IFED detectives and charged with 22 counts of fraud. When she appeared at Wolverhampton Crown Court, she received a 22-month prison sentence.
I believe Emma Fisher's crime spree developed almost into a habit, and she effectively couldn't stop herself. And it was one fraud after another fraud after another fraud.
Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £2 billion every year. That's almost £6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 15 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
that's the subject out the vehicle,
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a highly skilled dedicated police unit, they're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those con men, scammers, and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, surveillance footage scuppers and HGV drivers claim for a truckload of compensation.
Without the surveillance, we would have faced a claim into the many hundreds of thousands of pounds, and so it would have provided Mr. Doyle with a lottery win in compensation.
A bone-crunching fall.
You can feel every single hit as he's falling down the stairs. It was pretty harrowing to watch.
And door-to-door inquiries, IFED style.
It's police, can you open up? We will put the door in.
When it comes to catching someone out, there's nothing like a bit of damning video evidence, which is exactly what proved to be the undoing of HGV driver Lee Doyle after he grossly exaggerated a personal injury claim.
Mr. Doyle alleged that his accident happened when he was walking across his employer's yard and tripped over and fell and banged his lower back on a raised curbstone.
Injuries to the spine can be very serious, and in severe cases can leave victims with numerous ongoing problems. When the insurance company received Lee Doyle's claim, it appeared that he was suffering from every back complaint in the book.
The injuries that he was left with was a very stiff lower back. He had sciatic-type symptoms with dead legs that meant he couldn't walk very far. Whenever he did walk, he had to use a walking stick that he couldn't bend or lift or carry. And in particular, he couldn't sit still for very long periods, which obviously affected his job as an HGV driver.
With a list of complaints as long as that, you'd think that the doctor would be able to diagnose the problem in a heartbeat. But the specialist who examined Mr. Doyle was left scratching his head.
Unfortunately for Mr. Doyle, the orthopaedic surgeon couldn't find any reason for the nature of the injuries that he said he was suffering from. And because of that, he suggested referral on to a pain management consultant.
Unsurprisingly, the combination of Lee Doyle's supposed symptoms and an orthopaedic consultant that couldn't find anything wrong with him led the insurance company to suspect foul play. So they referred the case to their solicitors, BLM.
We had real concerns about Mr. Doyle's claim simply because it didn't add up. Somebody who'd had such a very straightforward accident of tripping and falling, Mr. Doyle said that he was significantly disabled. For example, he couldn't walk more than 25 yards. He needed a walking stick to get about. And when his own expert couldn't find an explanation for the symptoms he was describing, we thought it merited further investigation.
With Lee Doyle claiming his injuries were so severe he could no longer continue working as a lorry driver, he wanted his employer's insurers to cough up some cash.
He'd calculated his loss of earnings at £55,000. There were other incidental losses, additional help that he'd had around the home for DIY and gardening. The important factor for us was that Mr. Doyle said he would find it impossible to go back to his earlier job. And so his future loss of earnings could well have been into the hundreds of thousands of pounds.
But his claim for lost income was just the beginning, as Lee Doyle had a list of costs that was even longer than his string of injuries, taking the total claim to around £500,000.
He also claimed for travel expenses to various medical appointments and strangely even to his nan's house because he said that he couldn't shower at home, so had to go to her house to shower. He claimed for the additional care and assistance that his partner had provided him in getting him up out of bed in the morning and helping him dress in the morning. He'd claimed for additional help that he'd had looking after his fish. Mr. Doyle's case was rather extreme in that there were some very strange items of claim.
Faced with a potentially huge payout, but still not convinced that this was a legitimate claim, BLM arranged for Mr. Doyle to see a pain management consultant and a neurologist. But that's not all they did.
Because of the concerns that we had about the claim generally, we arranged for covert surveillance to be undertaken. The difficulty with that is that sometimes the surveillance operatives can be sitting there and not see anything at all. And so, because we'd arranged medical appointments, we knew where Mr. Doyle would be on a particular day at a particular time.
With the injuries that Lee Doyle was claiming to be suffering from, BLM were expecting the footage to show a man unsteady on his feet and who needed help to perform even the most basic movements. And as he arrived for and left his medical appointments, that's precisely what they did see. Case closed? Not quite.
Some of the surveillance we obtained of Mr. Doyle, you wouldn't believe that it was the same person that you read about in the medical reports. We're able to watch him going into a medical assessment, walking in a very disabled manner with a walking stick, presenting himself in chronic pain. When we eventually got the medical report back, he had told the expert that he had quite serious physical difficulties. What we saw Mr. Doyle do later in the day was simply amazing. What he'd said on paper, where he couldn't walk for more than 25 yards without a walking stick, we were able to disprove that, showing that he was walking his dog without any difficulty for over an hour. He said that he couldn't bend at the waist and lift things off the floor, but surveillance footage showed that he was lifting without any real difficulty at all.
But the most shocking footage was captured just 4 hours after Doyle had hobbled his way into a medical examination. In it, we see him hoisting heavy concrete slabs above his head onto a garage roof. Steady on now, Lee. Mind your back, son.
His evidence was that he couldn't drive, yet he was able to drive his own 4x4 vehicle without any apparent discomfort at all. So everything that we were being told simply wasn't borne out by the surveillance footage that we were presented with.
The video evidence proved beyond doubt that Lee Doyle was grossly over-exaggerating his claim, happy to play the role of the weak and wounded in order to receive a bumper payout. But it was a performance that BLM weren't buying.
Once we had collated all the surveillance evidence and we'd had the opportunity of having Mr. Doyle examined by our experts, we were waiting for court proceedings to be issued. That was really the last chance that Mr. Doyle had to come clean. We didn't know whether he would be honest in his presentation and say that he has tried to work, that he does have good days or bad days, that he is capable of doing some physical activity. When proceedings were eventually issued, he maintained that he was chronically disabled, that he hadn't worked since the date of the accident. It was unlikely he was ever going to be able to go back to his former job, and the claim that he presented in financial terms was very significant, into the hundreds of thousands of pounds. Our only response to that had to be that we disclosed all of our medical evidence and all of our surveillance evidence and pointed out that he'd been caught out.
Since his accident, Mr. Doyle had claimed around £25,000 in disability benefits. So, upon hearing about the exaggeration of his claim, the Department of Work and Pensions had a few questions of their own.
A separate investigation was undertaken by the Department for Work and Pensions through their fraud unit. We understand that Mr. Doyle's benefits were stopped immediately when the investigation was started.
Doyle was ordered to repay almost £25,000, but bogus disability benefits weren't the only thing he had taken away from him.
We understand that he tried to tender his resignation. We were informed by the employer that his resignation wasn't accepted, and so we understand that a process of gross misconduct was pursued and that eventually Mr. Doyle was dismissed.
BLM's investigations had scuppered what could have been a fraudulent claim in the region of £500,000.
Without the surveillance, we think we would have faced a claim into the many hundreds of thousands of pounds, and so it would have provided Mr. Doyle with a lottery win in compensation.
Instead, Lee Doyle was offered and accepted a £10,000 settlement, which is what BLM felt was the honest portion of his claim. But that didn't even cover all of his legal costs. He was now out of pocket and unemployed. However, if this case had been resolved just a year later, then things could have ended much more seriously.
I think Mr. Doyle is a very fortunate man for getting the level of compensation that we offered. Times have changed, thankfully, since Mr. Doyle put his claim in, and the way of the law now, we wouldn't actually be making any offers at all. In fact, we'd be looking to pursue Mr. Doyle for contempt of court, and which may lead to a prison term.
Still to come, a nasty tumble, but did he slip or did he trip?
Obviously, it's very sad when someone gets hurt, but is he entitled to make a claim?
And IFED treat another suspected fraudster to one of their special wake-up calls.
Please open up. What they're going to do is they're going to come round with the entry team and gain entry that way. Not the way we like to do it, but it's leaving us no option.
In January 2012, the police joined the fight against insurance fraud by forming an elite squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
IFED is a dedicated team that deals with insurance fraud. Whatever insurance policy there is out there, we investigate it.
There is a dedicated 40-strong unit that work 24/7 hunting down insurance fraudsters.
IFED has made over 450 arrests and saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims. money which ultimately goes back in our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
We are out there in numbers. You might get a nasty knock on your door in the morning if you commit this type of fraud.
With almost £400 million a year being lost through car insurance fraud, it's something that the officers of IFED have found themselves dealing with on a regular basis. And one of the biggest problems they encounter are crashes that have been instigated with the sole intention of making money.
Crash for cash involves staged or induced accidents. It's generally organised by people that know each other, and a typical example would be what's known as a slam-on, where a vehicle will slam its brakes on with the sole purpose of causing the vehicle behind to drive into it and then make a claim as a result of that accident.
During their first year of operation, IFED dealt with a crash for cash case, which hit the headlines.
This case involves two families from the Birkenhead area in Liverpool who reported that they're involved in a road accident in the Wirral area in March 2011.
It all seems fairly standard so far. So what was the problem?
The claim involved a road accident at a set of traffic lights where a BMW and a Rover was said to be in a collision. Within these two vehicles were 7 occupants that belonged to 2 separate families. And as a result of the accident, all members then submitted claims for personal injury, damage to the vehicles and vehicle recovery costs. And all told, those claims totalled £77,000.
At first glance, this was a classic shunt between 2 cars at the lights. But as the insurance company began to process the claims, it became clear that this was anything but an ordinary accident.
It wasn't so much the value of the claim that raised the alarm, it was the inconsistency in some of the detail provided by the claimants to the insurers that caused them to make a referral to IFED for further investigation.
By the time the case was handed over to IFED, forensic engineers had established that the damage to the cars didn't match up to the version of events on the claim form. And as if that wasn't dodgy enough, the insurance company had also discovered that members of the 2 families already knew each other and were friends on a social networking site.
This was clearly pre-planned and organised on a large scale. The value of the claims is £77,000, so that shows the level of planning and work that went into this crime.
After some investigations of their own, it wasn't long before IFED made their move.
IFED sent a team of detectives up to the Birkenhead area and effected the arrest of all 7 suspects. They were all charged and sent to court, where they were convicted of fraud offences. So the main offenders, Kenneth Nash and Darren Gallimore, both received custodial sentences 12 months each in prison.
Nash, Gallimore and their accomplices thought they could pull the wool over the insurance company's eyes and pocket a small fortune in the process. But they were sorely mistaken.
It should send out the message: if you don't want to get arrested, if you don't want to go to prison, if you don't want to get a criminal record, then don't commit insurance fraud.
Crash for cash doesn't just affect insurance companies though. One tactic that fraudsters use is to hire cars, crash them, and then cash in on personal injury claims. Someone who knows all too well what impact this type of crime can have is Tony Moore, who owns and runs a car rental company.
The effect on these cash for crash accidents to our company from a financial point of view are immense. Obviously, it just pumps up the insurance. Pumping up insurance means we have to put our prices up, which obviously affects our business. 2 years ago, we have over £200,000 worth of claims. That obviously has a knock-on effect on our premium the following year. It's immense.
Tony has first-hand experience of how a scam like Crash for Cash can hit a business's books. But as an employer, he also knows there's a greater cost to these crimes.
Additionally to that, if ever the insurance companies turn around and said, look, you know, we're not insuring you, then we shut the doors and we all go home, and I've got 46 people made redundant, all caused by somebody trying to rip you off cash for crash.
For now, Tony's business is managing to survive. But the threat of Crash for Cash is a serious concern.
It's not, as people think, a victimless, it's just money. It isn't money, it's people's lives.
With the likes of IFED clamping down and fighting back against those who see car insurance as a way to make a fast buck, Tony has some words of warning.
The message to those people out there that want to do this is, if we get a sniff of it, we'll go all the way to try and prove it. And if we prove it, we won't just say, no, we're not paying you. We will push and push and push for a prosecution. And the courts are starting to take it serious now, and we're talking now incarceration.
As Tony rightly says, this is now a crime with serious consequences. The good news is that the likes of you and I are starting to benefit from the work of units like IFED, because in 2013, the money saved from crash for cash scams reduced car insurance premiums by 12%. Although as far as IFED's concerned, they're only just getting started.
The Insurance Fraud Bureau estimates that the cost to the insurance industry is £392 million per year from crash for cash scams. So I mean, that's clearly a huge amount of money, and it is an area that we're putting a lot of resources into tackling. And I'd like to think that with the results that we're getting and the impact we're making, that we're well on the way to targeting this type of criminality, and in the future I'd like to think it will drop.
Just like lightning, you never know when disaster might strike. But thanks to the boom of personal injury claims, some accidents can have a silver lining in the form of a cash payout. In 2013, public transport operator First Group dealt with a claim from a gentleman who was making his way down the stairs at one of their train stations, when suddenly everything went horribly wrong.
When you come across claims like this, the first thing you normally think of when you see the injury is that's going to hurt, and seeing the footage just hammers that home. It's never nice to see anyone get injured in any way, and although you don't know what injuries he sustained, you can feel every single hit as he's falling down the stairs. It's not nice, and I do feel sorry for the gentleman concerned.
Thankfully, there were a number of people on hand to help the man out, although it was later discovered that the fall was every bit as bad as it looked.
The injuries sustained were quite nasty. He's got some minor bruising, but his main injury is actually a fracture to his knee, and that has got to hurt. It goes into the knee joint. It's very painful to walk on after, but at the time, yeah, he must have been in excruciating pain.
Even though it was a genuine accident, it wasn't long before First Group received a claim from the man's solicitors.
This gentleman alleged that he'd slipped when he'd got to the halfway point coming down the stairs. People don't just tend to slip on nothing, so he's assuming that therefore it was our fault. We caused him to fall down the stairs, therefore he's entitled to compensation for his rather nasty injuries.
If First Group were at fault, then the kind of payout that the man could have been looking at for injuries as severe as this certainly wasn't an amount to be sniffed at.
Overall, this claim was probably worth in the region of £50,000 for his compensation for his injuries, any potential loss of earnings claim, and the legal fees that would have ensued.
So, we have an accident that definitely happened, serious injuries that were sustained, and a claim for around £50,000 compensation. It all sounds fairly standard, but before companies like First Group get out the checkbook, they want to be certain that the blame lies with them first. And that's where CCTV can be an invaluable source of evidence.
I actually don't think that people realise just how much CCTV footage there is at a railway station, and they give very good coverage of the area. People just don't even know they're there.
In this case, there was a CCTV camera in prime position at the top of the stairs, so First Group had a bird's eye view of exactly what happened.
When we receive claims like this, what we're going to look at when we view the footage is, did anyone else have a particular problem walking along that passage of stairways? What ideally you're looking for is people walking down with no problems at all, which would suggest there wasn't a slip hazard, because we just don't know what this gentleman had slipped on.
But when First Group viewed the footage, there didn't appear to be any evidence of a slipping hazard, or indeed any hazard at all.
One of the key points you'll notice from the actual CCTV evidence is the small child actually joyfully skipping down the stairs with no real problems at all, even stepping on the section where the gentleman alleges he slipped. Why then is this chap alleging that he slipped on a step that was previously okay for the people that preceded him? It's clear there was no slipping hazard on those steps. Otherwise, that small child who had taken a jump at it would have gone flying.
So, if the man hadn't slipped like he claimed, then what really did happen?
He puts his left foot down, plants that quite normally. As he goes to step forward with his right foot, it gives way beneath him. This then causes him to stumble forward. At the same time, an unfortunate series of events, his trailing foot then catches the bag he's carrying, which flips him over, and he virtually somersaults down the stairs, striking probably every single step on the way down. And when I watched the footage, I did actually say ouch to myself every time he hit a step. It was, pretty harrowing to watch.
The severity of the fall had never been in doubt, but with no evidence to suggest that any blame lay with First Group, they didn't feel that the man was entitled to any compensation.
Once we reviewed the footage and realised that what the gentleman was saying was not actually true, we sent off the details of the CCTV to his solicitors and told them that we just weren't going to pay this claim out. They've subsequently closed their file and we've not heard from them since.
Were it not for the CCTV footage, this chap could have walked, or rather limped, all the way to the bank by claiming there was a slipping hazard that never existed. But situations like this are nothing new, and companies like First Group are finding themselves dealing with more and more people looking to pocket some easy money.
I think the practice from a legal point of view has become so easy to put a claim in on behalf of a person on the off chance that they will receive a payout does encourage some people to submit claims they otherwise wouldn't. Sometimes people know they've had an accident and it's no one's fault, but they're encouraged to try and make a claim for it anyway.
Although this case was dropped with no further action, there have been many instances where fraudulent claimers have been prosecuted and even sent to prison, which begs the question, is it really worth it?
Obviously, it's very sad when someone gets hurt, but is he entitled to make a claim? I think people are very hung up on the fact that if something happens to them, they're entitled to make a claim from someone, and accidents don't just happen. Well, they do. Not everything that happens to you, you can blame someone for. Sometimes it's just an accident.
It's early morning, and two teams of IFED officers have headed up north to carry out a dual raid in a suspected case of car insurance fraud. DC Andy Jackson is the officer in charge of one of the units.
What we plan to do today is we've got two warrants to attend simultaneously two addresses, and what they've done is they've both submitted claims for theft from their vehicles. The value of the thefts is in the region of 16,000. It's believed that they've done it on a number of occasions.
The suspected fraud is thought to have used quotes that were doctored to make them look like receipts. So IFED have got a pretty good idea what they need to find today.
We'll be looking for material which will assist the investigation. We'll be looking at probably computer evidence. If there's a suggestion that they've altered this documentation, they may very well scan that onto a computer.
Today, IFED are being assisted by local police units. So the first stop is the local station for a briefing and to get kitted up.
You just never know who you're going to be dealing with, people's reactions sometimes when they, get arrested, or police turn up at the address, people just react in different ways. So we're just going to make our way there now and see how we get on.
With everything set, the teams roll out.
Hello Mick, you all right? Look, we're literally going to be here in about a minute. Do you want us to go straight in?
Yeah, we're in now.
We'll go straight to the house. Cheers. All right, bye mate, bye.
After a final phone call with the other IFED team, Andy and the boys go in.
Hello, City Police, open up.
It's not unusual for people wanted by IFED to make a run for it. So, just in case today's suspect decides to do the old backdoor shuffle, local officers cover the exits. Although it looks as if the team may be too late.
It's police, can you open up? We will put the door in.
Word has come through that the suspect at the other raid has been arrested, but no one is able to get hold of the elusive homeowner who lives here. Although with crucial evidence to find, Andy and the team aren't leaving without it.
Right, it looks like what they're going to do is they're going to come round with the entry team and we'll gain entry that way. not the way we like to do it, but it's leaving us no option at this time. We've tried all numbers and all other means to get in touch with him, but we've been unsuccessful.
With the front door just moments away from being taken off its hinges, the suspect returns the team's phone call.
Yeah, it's DC Andy Jackson from City London Police. I understand you're on your way back to this address? Excellent, OK. All right, how far are you away? Lovely. All right, we'll see you when you get here, and we'll explain all. Thank you, bye. Right, he's on his way, he's 5 minutes away. And someone's just pulled up.
And sure enough, just a few minutes later, IFED get their man.
You all right? What we do is we'll move the car, if you can park your van up on the drive, and then what we'll do, we'll get you to open up, we'll go in, and we'll explain all.
The cameras remain outside the property.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to be arresting you on suspicion of fraud by false representation into those claims. All right? So for that, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you may later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
Although it isn't long before the suspect is brought out and taken away for questioning.
He was a bit surprised to see us here, but he's been cooperative, he's been compliant, and he's willing to assist us in our inquiries.
With the formalities out of the way, the search can begin. Almost half an hour later, Andy and the team emerge from the property, having seized a number of documents, mobile phones, and a laptop, which may contain crucial evidence.
Laptop's always handy because computers can be used to alter documentation. Documentation can be scanned into them, you know, or indeed documentation can be created on them. Due to the fact that he has had access to it, this is something that we can take back to London and review at a later date.
For Andy and the team, the work has only just begun. But after a shaky start, things are looking up.
It's been a good day in the fact that what we needed to do today has been achieved. Our objectives have been achieved. Job done.
The suspects were later interviewed under caution, and the case is still under investigation.